Welcome to Fantasy Audiobook, American Comics. Break Wanda, Get Superman Template. Chapter 81. Lawrence walked over, making a heavy sound with every step he stepped on the ground. Kneel down and apologize, cut off your tongue, and I can keep you from dying. Lawrence stared and cursed angrily. Phil Coulson's scalp was numb, and he hurriedly said, "Let's let this matter go like this, don't do it." Definitely, he wasn't afraid of Lawrence. But he was afraid that Etienne would get angry. Once it is done, this banquet will inevitably be bloody. Haha, look at his companions, they've actually given up. I laughed so hard, it's too late to admit my mistake now. The people around Pist laughed out loud, mouth full of mockery. The eyes are even more disdainful. Too trash, poor and cowardly. You dog, Lawrence yelled, I'll kill you after I get rid of him. Who? Phil Coulson took a deep breath and let it out slowly. Step aside. Come on, I don't care. Just do it. Coward, why don't you dare to speak? Lawrence stared at Etienne. His eyes were fierce, and he sneered endlessly. After he appeared, Etienne hadn't said a word yet. Etienne raised his head abruptly, his ferocious eyes exuded an icy chill. The real and pure killing intent made the menacing Lawrence freeze in place. For some unknown reason, there was an inexplicable voice in his heart that made him hesitate to take the next step. Etienne took a step ahead. This extremely ordinary movement made Lawrence subconsciously take a few steps back. Now, who is the coward? Etienne's eyes were cold and his face was mocking. A big man with hands and feet. How dare he lick a dead fat pig? It's not shameful. As soon as these words came out, there was an uproar around. This seemingly plain young man dared to say this. Say what they want to say, but dare not say. Yeah, a big man. Still a special soldier, in good health. Why can't you live? To find a big round fat woman for money. But this, they dare not say. They are not afraid of Lawrence, they are afraid of Caitlyn behind. The latter family has a big business, and they can't afford to offend them. Fact, what are you talking about? Lawrence raged, looking gloomy. I pressed my finger hard and made a clicking sound. Hearing the whispering voices of the people around him, his face was hot. Lawrence hated it most when others mentioned it. A big man, still a special soldier, actually eats soft food, and a woman is still a big round of dead fat pigs. Thinking of the grievances he suffered on the bed, his anger grew even stronger. Lawrence's arms were throbbing with blue veins, and his fists were clenched. Boom, his eyes sank, and killing intent emerged. One step out, the fist wind as sharp. The people around pushed back 2 steps again, leaving an open space among the crowded crowd. No matter how cowardly Lawrence was, he was still a special soldier. The bulging muscles, and the sharp fist style, all show the power of this punch. Everyone looked at Etienne with ridicule and pity in their eyes. No matter how stubborn you are, in the face of absolute strength, it can only be defeated. And became the object of ridicule by everyone. Break his hands and feet. Drag him outside and kill this yellow-skinned pig. The fat woman Caitlyn yelled. Saliva splattered and stinks. She didn't dare to kill people in the Stark building again. Doing so will undoubtedly offend Tony. The people around covered their noses and pushed back 2 steps imperceptibly. But his eyes were looking at the fat woman with fear. She deserves to be a woman who controls tens of billions of property. When in rage, I can still maintain basic sanity. Don't worry, Lawrence's killing intent surged. Even if the fat woman doesn't say anything, he will kill Etienne to vent his anger. Lawrence's body, which was close to 2 meters, was like a hill. Running fast, the impact brought by it is extremely eye-stimulating. People around shook their heads secretly. Sneer inwardly. The power of this punch is simply unbearable. The victory and defeat have been divided. This young man will eventually pay the price of his life for his impulse. Boom, the fist smashed down hard. There was a dull impact sound. Just when everyone thought Etienne would be beaten to death. Click, there was the sound of bones breaking. Ah! Lawrence let out a scream. For a long time, his arm was smashed by a punch. Blood spurted out from the wound, staining the white bone stubble red. Blood splashed and fell on the people around, and also dyed the gorgeous skirt of the fat woman red. Not waiting for everyone to be shocked, Etienne's palm had already pinched Lawrence's neck. Use a little force. Lawrence was lifted up. His body trembled unceasingly. The intense fear even paralyzed the pain of his broken arm. The people around looked at each other with shock in their eyes. Lawrence, who was a special soldier, had his arm shattered by a punch. It was like a dog in distress, its throat was choked, and its life was manipulated at will. Who is this person? Why is he so powerful? I didn't even see how he did it. Lawrence was in a chokehold. The eyes of everyone were full of shock. Lawrence looked terribly miserable. Blood kept dripping on the floor. Makes a tingling sound. However, there is also a group of people with a faint disdain on the corner of their mouths. It doesn't matter if you are strong, if you offend Caitlyn, there is only one case of death. In this world, the most important thing is power and money. No matter how strong a single person is, it is useless. Unless, you can have the powerful strength to flip the table and ignore the rules. For example, Yi Tian, even an existence of Tony's level should be treated solemnly. However, how could this kind of person wear a tattered outfit? In order to see Tony, they desperately crowded inside. Due to the lack of oxygen, Lawrence's face turned into a liver color, and it became more and more difficult to breathe. He exhausted his last bit of strength and forced out a word. Let go. Let me go, or, otherwise, your end will be very miserable. Miserable. In this world, there are people who can make Yi Tian miserable. I'm afraid not yet. There was a faint smile on Mystique's mouth. Put your arms around your chest. Let the heavy place squeeze out a more attractive arc. Oh, really? Yi Tian raised his eyes, and the murderous intent in them made Lawrence's whole body icy cold. Click. There was a sound, and Lawrence's head tilted. The neck is at a horrible angle. Died. Lawrence is dead. Everyone was shocked. How dare someone kill someone in Stark Industries? And it was at Tony's party. Unwise, this offends not only Caitlyn, but Tony as well. Force is good, but IQ is too low. Look, Caitlyn is trembling with anger. I bet this person won't survive tonight. Now, even if I kneel on the ground and apologize, I have no chance. Everyone shook their heads, and Lawrence died. The festivities between the two sides will be big. Even for the sake of face, Caitlyn will take revenge at all costs. You are finished. You have offended me completely. Caitlyn made a sharp voice, which hurt people's eardrums. At this time, Tony in the distance also heard the sound. Anyone dared to make trouble in Stark Industry, even kill people. Tony's face darkened instantly. With a snap of his fingers, more than a dozen battle armor fragments flew in the air. Under the thrust of the white energy, it came directly in front of Tony, and passed it up by itself. The people around exclaimed. There is even more admiration in the eyes of many girls. Since ancient times, beauties love heroes. Especially since Tony is a handsome billionaire. Whoosh! Tony turned into Iron Man and flew straight into the air. The thrusters of the footsteps exude fiery white energy, which is particularly conspicuous in the outcropping night banquet. Iron Man is here. This man is finished. This means that this person has completely lost his chance of survival. The wealthy people around exclaimed, with deep envy in their eyes. Although in the eyes of ordinary people, they are extremely noble, nuomahau, and superior. But compared to Tony, he's just a little guy. In particular, the latter is still a genius, and has developed a top-notch armor, the incarnation of Iron Man. While becoming a hero, he was also loved by most people. The market value of Tony Stark's industry has directly increased by more than 10 times. Handsome, rich, high IQ, a genius, and a famous superhero. In this world, I am afraid that no one can be more outstanding and more enviable than Tony. A man with a big belly said with emotion. His face was full of regret and envy. That's not necessarily true. An old man was silent for a moment before retorting. Leverage it. On this earth, no one can compare Tony's life. More wishful, more perfect, more enviable. The people around rolled their eyes and didn't want to talk. Yi Tian, the old man said lightly. Everyone's scalps went numb. No matter how perfect Tony is, he falls within the scope of normal people and is subject to various constraints. And Yi Tian killed Superman head-on. With absolute strength, he can turn the tables at any time and reshuffle the whole world. If Tony is within the rules, the most enviable existence, then Yi Tian itself is the rule. Rumble. A silver-white stream of light appeared in the sky. The figure of Iron Man appeared in the sky. How dare you kill people here? Tony's voice was cold. See the arrival of Iron Man, the superhero. The fat woman also inexplicably developed a lot of courage. Pointing at Yi Tian and cursing. It's the born of this fool who kills people here. All kinds of words are unbearable. Iron Man turned his head to the fat woman. Please shut up. Then he looked at Yi Tian and said coldly, Sir, you have violated the law by killing people in public, and I will send you to prison and lock you up. Everyone looked at Yi Tian with gloating and pity in their eyes. Sent to prison. With the family status of the fat woman, this man would probably be tortured every day. If you can't live, you can't die. Now, it's too late to kneel down and beg for mercy. However, to everyone's surprise, the three of Yi Tian all looked calm, as if Iron Man didn't exist. What shocked them even more? The figure in front of him threw Lawrence to the ground. Then his face was gloomy, with a ferocious tea garden in his eyes. Slowly walked towards the fat woman. Sir, if you still want to do something, I will do it and kill you directly. Tony said in a deep voice. The face under the steel mask was gloomy and ugly. In the entire Beacon country, no one dared not to take him seriously. Tony, long time no see. Phil Coulson rubbed his throat, recovered his voice, and said. Tony froze for a moment. The voice was somewhat familiar. JARVIS, voice data comparison. Big data voice comparison. Phil Coulson 0.98%. The electronic sound echoed in his ears, and Tony froze for a moment. The man turned out to be Phil Coulson. What does his makeup come from in? Then the person next to you. Hiss. It's Yi Tian. Tony's eyes widened slightly, his face full of disbelief. At this moment, a voice came from the ear. Step aside. There is no need to compare this voice. Tony knew whose it was too. Haha, did you see, killing people in Stark Industries, and making Iron Man. Tony let go. Iron Man, kill this stupid fool. Crab occasionally, do you know that you are going to die, so you have to carry out the pretend to the end. This Oriental guy is really ostentatious joker. It's a pity that pretending to be fun for a while will only make your ending worse. People around scowled and scolded. The boredom towards Yi Tian has reached its peak. The fat woman even snorted coldly. You dare to let Mr. Tony get out of the way, you are really blind. Yi Tian was just wearing a wig at the moment. The makeup was slightly modified on the face. As the personal masterpiece of Zai's 9th level Agent Hill. It's normal for people not to recognize it. However, what happened in the next scene directly shocked people's jaws. This billionaire, playboy, tech genius, and even superhero Iron Man's Tony, stepped aside. Yes, without the slightest hesitation, just left. Looking at Iron Man flying a few meters away. Everyone's mouths grew wide, their faces full of disbelief. What's the situation now? Losing Iron Man's protection, the fat woman constantly backed away. Ah, don't come here, do you know who I am? Go away, you, take another step, and I will make you regret it. Yi Tian stretched out his hand slowly. Even if it is a woman, only the ancient one who dared to insult her parents and raised her. He will kill without mercy. Plop, the fat woman fell to the ground with a bloody hole between her eyebrows. Everyone's scalp went numb for a while. Fat women are not Lawrence's kind. He is a super businessman worth tens of billions, and his father is a member of parliament with real power. Killed now. I am afraid that the entire lighthouse country will be shaken by this incident. No matter who the man in front of him was, his daughter-in-law ran to him. Moreover, his family will also be implicated. Tony, let's go and talk about some things, such as poisoning. Yi Tian said. Inside the armor, Tony trembled, his face full of disbelief. Only he and Pepper Potts know about this matter. How did Yi Tian know? However, now is not the time to think about this. Definitely, let's talk in the back room, Tony said. Happy, dispose of the body. By the way, if we have any work in contact with this dead lady, please terminate it immediately. Happy nodded. He seemed chubby, but he was actually Tony's driver and bodyguard. Also, from the people Tony trusted the most. Okay, Mr. Tony. Hiss. Everyone gasped. What's the situation now? Under his nose, the guest was killed. Not only was Tony not angry, but he even wanted to terminate the cooperation with the victim's company. Looking at Tony and others going away, everyone kicked their beards and stared angrily. Fark, is this how Tony handles things? We were the guests invited to the banquet. Ms. Caitlyn was killed, but Tony didn't care. Is this our superhero Iron Man? Many people questioned loudly. This kind of sound is endless. However, there are also a group of old and cunning people who look at each other. Countless doubts arose in my heart. Tony is an extremely arrogant and complacent man. Similarly, with his superior IQ, he is not a person who is easily subdued. At his own banquet, the guests were killed, which is undoubtedly a public slap in the face. Tony, on the other hand, wasn't angry at all. In the entire Beacon country, there must be someone stronger than Tony. But these people can't let the dignified Iron Man Tony give in. Who on earth is it? They frowned. Suddenly, a figure broke into their minds. He doesn't look like that man, and he has hair. Some means of makeup can easily change a person's appearance. Fact, I scolded him just now, what should I do now? These old and cunning people looked at each other and felt their scalps go numb. Those who can stand here are all high-end talents in all aspects of society. Everyone is human. Hearing the conversation of several people, they reacted one after another. If it really exists, even if Caitlyn died, no one dared to take revenge. Immediately, they seemed to realize something. Cold sweat oozes from the head, and the body keeps trembling. The cool breeze blowing in summer is no longer refreshing. It was icy cold. They froze their hands and feet so cold that they couldn't stop shaking. Yi Tian, I don't know who called out. Dozens of onlookers knelt down on the ground, their legs and feet softened one after another. This scene surprised the guests who didn't see Yi Tian's murder. This group of people are big shots with heads and faces. What's the situation now? They even knelt down collectively. However, the dozens of people who were limp on the ground didn't care about the pointing around them. The chaos in their minds was like a paste, and the fear deep in their hearts was constantly breeding and entangled them. The name of Yi Tian does not only represent justice. Likewise, it represents killing. Almost all the enemies were killed, leaving no one behind. And such a killing god was not only met by them, but also scolded by them. Plop. An old man with gorgeous clothes and neatly combed silver-white hair rolled his eyes and passed out. As if it was a signal, several of the other people fell to the ground, all of them having heart attacks. Some women were even more unbearable, lying on the ground and crying. What kind of demeanor, what competing for beauty, all were left behind at this moment. The expensive clothes were directly attached to the ground. The bag that I couldn't put it down was also thrown on the ground. Compared with life, these things are not worth mentioning. The name of Yi Tian is enough to make people fearful. At this moment, Yi Tian doesn't know what's going on outside. He's sitting in Tony's private office. Pepper Potts, wearing a white shirt, is extremely hot. Those long legs can play for a year. Put the coffee in front of several people. Yi Tian's eyes lit up. The Potts in front of him is not that stunningly beautiful. But that kind of intellectuality of a lady is rare. Yi Tian thought for a moment, the woman in his own fish pond. It seems that only Harley Quinn is a serious college graduate. Also a psychiatrist. It's a pity that I have a mental problem, and I'm crazy all day long. And Natasha Romanoff. If you ask her about the method of killing people, it is simpler than the Pythagorean theorem. Especially Wanda is even more outrageous, I guess I can't even write the name. 3 parts sugar, 75 degrees. Pause. Put the first cup of coffee in front of Tony. Put the remaining 3 cups in front of Yi Tian and others, please use it slowly. Then he stood aside, extremely quiet, but in his heart, he was still very surprised. Office. Usually Tony does not develop externally. Who are the 2 men and 1 woman in front of me? At this moment, Tony said a name, which made her look pale. Yi Tian, what do you want to talk about? Yi Tian. The person in front of him turned out to be Yi Tian. But why not? Not bald. Could it be makeup? Cure your palladium poisoning. As soon as these words came out, Tony stood up with a bang, his face full of disbelief. Palladium element poisoning has troubled him for a long time. After constantly trying, I still haven't found a new element to replace. He is desperate. Every day is very high profile, incomparably arrogant. I also want to be remembered by people before I die. Once upon a time there was a super genius named Tony Stark who was also a superhero Iron Man. And now, Yi Tian actually offered to help him heal the palladium element. I have tried 145 combinations of elements, a total of 3,487,629 combinations. Did you use molecular splitting, or quantum recombination? I used, your uncle. What are you talking about? I don't understand at all. Yi Tian said he is illiterate. In his previous life, he was a junior college student. In this life, he was on the mountain and only learned magic. Other education is blank. Tony noticed Yi Tian's expression. He froze for a moment, then smiled wryly. If others tease him like this, he will go out of the country directly. However, Yi Tian couldn't beat him either. Don't entertain me. Tony lay on the sofa, his face darkened slightly. Tony, trust Yi Tian, he never talks nonsense. Phil Coulson spoke. What kind of method Yi Tian has, he doesn't know. But after getting along for so long, time has proved that Yi Tian is a reliable person. Tony's face changed twice, and Yi Tian made a series of amazing things, and finally decided to believe it. Let me see your chest first. Yi Tian said. Potts came over and reached out to unbutton the button. As Tony's assistant, she is not only a research assistant, but also responsible for the former's daily life. I'll do it myself. Tony tugged hard, and the buttons bounced off. The gray shirt was ripped off directly. Hiss. Phil Coulson and Mystique gasped. I saw Tony's chest covered with black lines like spider webs. With the arc reactor on the chest as the core, it extends around. The most important thing is that there are looming lines on Tony's neck. If it goes on like this, I'm afraid it won't take long for him to die completely. Oh, Potts covered his mouth, tears streaming down his face. Tony, her voice trembled. Being eroded by the palladium element like this, how painful this process will be. Tony waited for death alone. Facing that unknown death, how flustered and worried he was. And he didn't find it at all. Beautiful girl, if you cry, you won't be beautiful. Tony. This sloppy playboy on the surface seems to have no one in his eyes. In fact, he is very considerate of other people's feelings. It's just that his haughty personality made his expression a little different. Lithium dioxide can neutralize the palladium element and reduce your burden. Yi Tian frowned. Tony's poisoning was more serious than he imagined. Tony was lost in thought. After a while, his eyes lit up. Immediately he stood up. JARVIS. Deduction algorithm. In front of him, a virtual screen appeared. The playboy stared at the screen seriously, constantly operating with his hands. About a minute later, his eye sockets were slightly red. It works, really works. Potts pursed his lips, his suppressed emotions couldn't hold back at this moment. Hugging Tony with tears in his eyes. Woo, that's great. Tony hesitated and patted Potts on the back. Okay, it's okay. But I should be comforted, not you. Boss Minnie. Posy took 2 steps back blushing, and tidied his hair in a little panic. Tony turned his head to look at Yi Tian, and was silent for a long time. Thank you. After finishing speaking, this lighthouse country is in full swing. A hint of embarrassment flashed across the face of the arrogant playboy genius. Thank you 2 words, it is too difficult to say from his mouth. Phil Coulson and Mystique had incredible faces. He looked at Yi Tian in shock. This man actually solved the problem that plagued the genius of Tony Stark. Mystique, on the other hand, thinks more. Beautiful eyes shine. This man, perhaps really is what Magneto said. Only Yi Tian supports mutant. Humans will no longer discriminate against mutants. And mutant will usher in a new future. There was a faint smile on Yi Tian's face. It wasn't that Tony wasn't smart enough to discover that lithium dioxide could neutralize palladium poisoning. On the contrary, it was because he was too smart. From beginning to end, all Tony's experiments and attempts are to find a new element to replace palladium. Solve the problem from the root. Never thought about it, a way to temporarily relieve it. This is a flaw in her haughty character. Can't say it's bad. It's just a matter of digging into a dead end. This thing can only be relieved temporarily. We need to find new elements to replace it. Yi Tian entrusted. As soon as these words came out, the originally cheerful atmosphere fell into a low mood again. Mr. Yi Tian, What can you do? Paz asked with pleading eyes. This expression is rare in her who is intellectual and capable. Tony gave a wry smile. Regarding the new elements, he has studied for a long time, and no one knows better than him. None of the known elements in the world can replace palladium and become the energy core of the arc reactor. Phil Coulson, did Howard leave something behind before he died? Yi Tian asked in a low voice. Howard is Tony's father, a super talented scientist. Decades ago, the prototype of the arc reactor was established and found a new energy source to replace palladium. Phil Coulson froze for a moment. I'm going to look into this. Phil Coulson pulled out a tablet. After a moment, nodded. There is indeed a batch of things, how do you know? Hill told me. Yi Tian casually blamed one person. You give those things to Tony. Remember, don't omit anything, give it all to him. Yi Tian asked. Phil Coulson nodded. Tony frowned slightly. I don't know why Yi Tian mentioned his father. Study what your father left behind. There are new elements that replace palladium in it. Yi Tian said. Then he didn't say a word. He doesn't understand chemistry and physics. There was only one way to show Tony. As for whether it can be found, it depends on the latter's ability. If you succeed, the credit is yours. Failed, I can only say that Tony is too stupid. At this moment, the electronic sound suddenly sounded. Discover the intruder. The voice just fell, before everyone reacted. There was a loud bang. The whole building shook. What happened? Tony yelled. Several screens light up. A dozen people broke into the Stark building. After the security stopped them, the group of people had ferocious smiles on their faces. Red lines appeared on his body, and liquid like lava flowed inside. Then it exploded with a bang. The surging air waves, accompanied by the flames, engulfed several security guards. The gunpowder smoke dissipated, leaving a huge amount of pothole on the flat ground. The steel bars in the potholes melted in the instant high temperature. The rest of the dozen or so people went straight upstairs. Aim course as right banquet. Extremis. Yi Tian narrowed his eyes slightly. Why did this matter come earlier? He didn't know that because of Dr. Zola's death. 0. The plan for Iron Man Tony has already been advanced. Stop them quickly, Tony said in a deep voice. Once let this group of people succeed. According to the calculated destructive power, all the people in the banquet will die. You must know that the people here are all the best in all levels of the lighthouse country. Once all die, the entire beacon country will be subject to unprecedented turmoil. Turn on the defense system, Tony said. At the same time, the walls of the room moved. A battle armor was revealed. As for Yi Tian, he had already stood up, and his body disappeared in an instant. Tony, you don't seem to need to go, Phil Coulson said, pointing to the monitoring screen. Tony hadn't put on his battle armor yet. He froze for a moment and looked at the screen. The corner of his mouth couldn't help twitching. It turned out that Yi Tian had already met the group of intruders. How fast is his speed? Tony's scalp tingled. On the screen, Yi Tian has already started killing. Facing these little guys, Yi Tian punched out. The air vibrates. Strong winds swept all around. Before a dozen people could react, they were hit by a terrifying force. This group of people were injured, but they didn't die immediately. Instead, the body surface squirmed, and cracks appeared one after another. The magma-like liquid in it distorts the space. Fact, we are mortally wounded and will explode. Phil Coulson cursed. Yi Tian is in danger, Mystique said in horror. She could see the damage caused by the explosion in the hall on the first floor. Even the steel bars could be melted. The power is even more terrifying than electromagnetic grenades. The impact of the explosion of more than a dozen people was superimposed. No one can stop it. By then, half of the Stark industrial building will collapse. It is in the center of New York and densely populated. There are many people on the main road around. The building collapsed, and many people would die. Everyone closed their eyes in despair, and began to think about ways to save their lives. In this case, even Yi Tian couldn't stop the explosion. However, after waiting for a long time, the expected explosion did not come. Occasionally Crab, Potts exclaimed. Potts' voice made Tony very surprised. As his favorite assistant, it shouldn't be such a big surprise. Potts, you don't. Tony hadn't finished speaking. He opened his mouth wide and cried out in surprise. In the video, the entire floor is covered by a layer of blue water. A dozen people turned into ice sculptures, motionless. The crimson lava pattern was also frozen. Yi Tian snapped his fingers, the space shook, and a dozen people were reduced to ashes. Do it all. Yi Tian disappeared from the screen. Perfect solution. Yi Tian's voice suddenly sounded in the room, startling everyone. Turning around, Yi Tian was sitting on the sofa, sipping coffee. The coffee temperature is still piping hot. Old man Guguan, warming wine and killing Washong. Today I, Yi Tian, also pretended to be a force. A thought rose in Yi Tian's mind, and he thought it happily. Mr. Stark, many reporters have come to the building, asking to see you. The explosion in the hall attracted the attention of many people. Many of the reporters who have been hanging around Tony. Keen to find this as big news. A swarm of bees surrounded them. 253, it seems that you are busy. Yi Tian stood up. Let's go first. Phil Coulson politely kissed Pot's right hand. Thank you for the coffee. The latter smiled generously. Thank you for the compliment. Yi Tian raised his eyebrows, approving this Western bad habit. Pulling Posey's left hand, just about to kiss it, suddenly thought of something. Have you ever jerked off to Tony? Posey had a question mark on his face, suspecting that he had heard it wrong. What? Yi Tian nodded slightly and lowered his left hand. Phil Coulson was livid. The three left through the back door, all of them did not meet K-Na. Exit the Stark building. Mystique's shoulders were constantly shaking, and Pist laughed out loud. Phil Coulson's face was even more ugly. Pooh. He wiped his mouth desperately. Yi Tian, you are so cheap. You want to take advantage of yourself. Who the hell is cheap? Yi Tian ruthlessly countered. Phil Coulson stared angrily. I'm going back to S.H.I.E.L.D., what about you? I'll go home, Yi Tian said. Mystique sees the doctor with kind eyes and a smile. I'll see you later when I have a chance. 3 people respectively. Yi Tian wiped off the makeup on his face, and it was very uncomfortable to stick to his face. Walking alone on the street. He did not choose to fly home, but walked slowly. I haven't experienced such a comfortable feeling in a long time. It was already late at night, and it was a comfortable time for the wind to blow on my body. On the wall next to him, there are all kinds of graffiti. Under the dim light, it looked a little hideous, like a hungry ghost that could crawl out at any time. You, hand over all the money. Around the corner, a few underage gangsters suddenly emerged. 6 people, 4 men and 2 women, have tattoos of various shapes on their bodies. Holding a dagger, he gradually approached Yi Tian. Uncle, be obedient, otherwise, you will be in bad luck. Yi Tian sighed. In the lighthouse country, there are really too many such minor crimes. Without 9-year compulsory education, they don't even have the most basic character. Get out, don't disturb my interest. Yi Tian frowned and snorted coldly. Fake, shame on your face, kill him. Several people brandished daggers. There is fierceness in the eyes. At their age, it is the age when they are not afraid of anything. It doesn't matter how serious it is to strike, and it is easy to kill people. All ordinary people will basically hand over their money when they encounter this situation. In exchange for a peace. However, they met Yi Tian. Want to die? Yi Tian's voice turned cold. The killing intent condensed from killing countless people spread out. The surrounding air instantly became extremely cold. The 6 gangsters stopped abruptly, their bodies trembling constantly. Their faces were ugly, and they looked at Yi Tian in fear. The person in front of him, at this moment, seemed to have turned into a demon crawling out of hell. Boom, just some breath. The 6 gangsters flew upside down and fell heavily to the ground. There was a scream. 6 people curled up on the ground, howling in pain. What do you want? We're from the metal gang. If you dare to hurt us, you will definitely be beaten to death by our boss. Yi Tian raised his eyebrows, and the boss. It seems that this metal gang is really worth it. It is not known how many people were bullied. Now that you have met it, just clean it up. Tell me your base camp. Yi Tian said. A few gangsters supported him to stand up. They looked at each other and sneered. Do you want to call the police and raid our base? You, the young people come out to mess around, they talk about loyalty, I won't talk about it. That is, don't even think about it. At worst, you will go to prison, and you will be released in 10 days. You will still be a good man. The lighthouse country's criminal punishment for minors is not serious. So it also led many people to take the wrong path. Yi Tian slammed his fist on the wall. Boom! The wall was directly pierced. The 6 gangsters' eyes widened and their breathing became short of breath. Without the slightest hesitation, he knelt down on the ground with a plop. I said, don't kill us. Turn left in the alley ahead, turn right, then go west for 1 block, then go north. Is the route so complicated? The vigilance of gangsters is so high now. You take me there, Yi Tian said. The 6 stood up. They looked at each other, revealing an imperceptible smile. Then go to the front. After walking for a while, I saw Yi Tian not far behind. He lowered his voice, with fierceness in his eyes. This idiot is actually going to our base. However, our boss, can we beat him? Our boss is a super ability user, and this person in front of him will be severely punished. Yi Tian listened to all their words in his ears. However, he wasn't in the flat. With his current strength, he has already stood in the first echelon of the earth. The leader of a mere gangster gang on the street, even if he is a person with super abilities, so what? It's really unforgivable to do bad things by relying on super abilities. Soon, several people turned around an alley. The 6 people looked at each other, ran forward and shouted loudly, "Help, someone is bullying our metal gang. Come quickly." The voice rang out. The houses on both sides of the alley in front opened directly. A dozen gangsters with sticks and daggers ran out. 2 of them were even holding pistols. They are not very old, basically they are still minors. Dressed in strange shapes. The hair is dyed different colors. Some girls are only 13 or 14, and they bare their breasts and wear nose rings. Leaning on the man, he looked at Yi Tian with a sneer. Hands up, my bullet, not vegetarian. Fake, those who dare to bully our metal gang are looking for death. With the help of the people around, the original 6 people also gathered around with grim smiles. Grass, old thing, these people know you are afraid. Today I will break your hands and feet, and then kill you. Yi Tian rubbed his nose. He was only 18 years old, yet he was called an old man. Have you ever killed anyone? Yi Tian asked with a smile. This question is important. If you have killed someone, the nature has changed. He won't hold back anymore. People here, even if they don't die, they are disabled. Have you ever killed anyone? Definitely. Old thing, be afraid. A group of people froze for a moment, looked at each other, and said guiltily. Hearing this, Yi Tian's killing intent arose slowly dissipated. Him, a yellow hair shouted. All the people around picked up their sticks and smashed them over. Yi Tian waved his hand casually. A dozen people all flew out backwards. Some people hit the wall heavily. Some people fell into the trash can. Others smashed the door and fell into the house. This blow didn't do much damage, but it was enough to hurt them for a while. Fact, it hurts me to 0.0. How did he do it? With just a wave of his hand, is he also a super ability user? Call the boss, let the boss deal with him. A group of people rolled on the ground. Can't stop howling. At this moment, a door was kicked open. A beautiful figure walked out slowly. The gangsters around saw this scene with ecstasy and excitement in their eyes. It's stuck, boss, teach this guy a lesson. Haha, this time, it's too late for you to run. The gangster gritted his teeth. They have seen the big tricks. It's unbelievable. No matter who it is not the boss's opponent. Dare to come to my metal gang to make trouble, court death. A cold voice came, with a little domineering indifference. Chen Ying slowly came out from the shadows. Seeing this person, even Yi Tian couldn't help but widen his eyes. Under the dim light, Yi Tian stood proudly. Around a dozen gangsters were lying on the ground, howling in pain. A beautiful figure walked out slowly. The cool summer wind blows, swinging a few strands of long green hair. Beneath that fair face was a delicate face. While the jade finger was flipping, several metal balls flew up and down. Although the grade is not old, he already has long and slender legs. The whole person exudes a cool aura of Yuji. The domineering look between the brows is even more attractive. Lorna, Yi Tian spoke directly after experiencing a brief astonishment. The girl opposite was stunned for a moment, her beautiful eyes fell on Yi Tian. The steel balls in his hand, like arms, fell to the ground with a clatter. Yi Tian, the girl exclaimed. Aren't you in the hospital? How did you get here? Yi Tian asked suspiciously. Hear this. Lorna's face turned cold, and she said unhappily, didn't you say you came to find me? Why haven't you come? I was bored, so I ran out. Hee, I'm too busy, I forgot. Yi Tian scratched his head. Said slightly apologetically. After hearing the explanation, Lorna's face softened slightly. How about my iron gang? She raised her eyebrows, looking a little smug. It's not good. Yi Tian frowned and shook his head. Stay out all day, come home with me. Lorna saw that his achievements were being ignored, so he intentionally showed a ferocious expression. Not going back, Yi Tian said coldly. If you don't go back, I'll beat you. Don't go. Lorna's teeth itched angrily, showing her small canine teeth, which were very cute. Ever since Yi Tian rescued her in Escalate Castle, she will never forget Yi Tian. However, at this moment Yi Tian reprimanded her in front of so many subordinates. It's too disrespectful to her. Yi Tian grabbed it with a big hand, and several golden rune locks surrounded Lorna. With a light pull, Lorna was picked up and slapped on the buttocks. Hiss. Have to say, Westerners develop fast. 15 is already so resilient. No way back. No return. Clap clap. Not going back. No return. Clap clap. Back. I'll be back. Lorna's eyes were red. He pursed his lips aggrievedly. He turned his head away from Yi Tian. The gangsters around resisted the pain and got up. He stared at all this dumbfounded. Their boss was hugged and spanked like this. Can't bear it. Absolutely can't bear it. Let go of the boss. Fack, stop me or I'll shoot. A dozen people cursed angrily. Hey, no, have you noticed that the person in front of you is somewhat familiar? Yeah, if you remove your hair. It can't be Yi Tian. It looks more and more like it. Excuse me, are you Yi Tian? Many punks gasped. His voice trembled, and his eyes shone brightly. They are the age of dreams. I admire superheroes like Iron Man and Superman the most. And now, the most respected superhero in the entire world, the most powerful superhero, is Yi Tian. Yi Tian nodded. Looking at the dozens of delinquent teenagers around, I couldn't help but sigh Lorna's personality charm. Surprisingly, in a short period of time, so many people gathered and became demons. It is worthy of being the leader of the second generation of mutant in the future. Not only the ability is the same as the cheap daddy Magneto. The charisma of personality is not weak at all. 3 children of Magneto, so to speak. Lorna's character and ability are simply a replica of Magneto. Wow, it's really Yi Tian. Oh my god, I'm going dizzy. Fake, it's not a dream, hit me quickly and see if it hurts. Snapped. There were crisp applause. Hiss. It hurts, occasionally, really, I'm not dreaming. A group of people had golden eyes and surrounded them one after another. Yi Tian, I am your idol. Fake, get out of here, you won't even say a word. Mr. Yi Tian, you are my idol. Can you sign your name for me? A group of people were chattering, even forgetting the pain on their bodies. Hit by Yi Tian. Just kidding, this is an honor, okay. Survived a move under Yi Tian's hands, and survived. It can blow for a lifetime. You robbed, go to prison and surrender yourself. Yi Tian was silent for a while, and then spoke. The warm atmosphere around quickly cooled down. Lorna was startled, and said quickly, Yi Tian, they are not bad people. Many of them are orphans, or single-parent families. Very unhappy. Leave them alone. Yi Tian didn't speak, but looked around at the crowd. Open your mouth slowly. You find the robbed and get their forgiveness. No violence. This matter, I can pretend it didn't happen. The gangsters around nodded their heads. Facing Yi Tian, this group of unruly gangsters were extremely obedient. Stop messing around on the streets, find a school and study hard. The gangsters around were a little silent. The last thing they want is to learn, which is harder than killing them. Study hard, I have offended many people, if you are successful in the future, you can still help me. Yi Tian said with a smile, which can be regarded as an encouragement. For teenagers, the words of idols are 100 times more effective than the words of parents. Yi Tian is very clear about this. If the fairy sister Lu on TV appeared in front of him and said to study hard, and when you are admitted to Tsinghua University, I will let you have it. I am afraid that Etienne in his previous life was already a member of Tsinghua University. Can we help Mr. Etienne in the future? My God, I must study hard from now on. A group of people trembled with excitement. My heart is full of passion. A flame blazed in his chest. Etienne left. The gangsters also left. Who knows, today's conversation. Let the future lighthouse country have several more scientists. There was even a general and 2 congressmen. Several more have joined SHIELD to protect the world with firm belief. Etienne thought for a while, and felt that it was still impossible to bring Lorna home. After all, there are already 2 fish there. Going to one, wouldn't it be a mess? After thinking for a while, Etienne called Phil Coulson. Briefly described the matter. How about renting a house? Phil Coulson asked. No, Etienne directly refused. With Lorna's temper, no one was watching, and she disappeared in 2 days. There was silence on the phone for a while. Or let her go to my house. Live with my wife. You're a daughter-in-law again. You're married, Etienne exclaimed. Phil Coulson cursed. Keep your voice down, the agent's family, but it's the top secret, and you know it. A minute later, Etienne hung up the phone. The corners of his mouth twitched. Phil Coulson is actually married and has 2 sons and a daughter. Immediately, Etienne received an address. Etienne disappeared instantly with Lorna. The countryside outside New York City. Several wooden houses stand in a row. There are warm lights in the room. You are Etienne. Phil Coulson's wife is not a very attractive person. But it belongs to the good-looking type, and the more you look at it, the more comfortable it is. Hi sister-in-law, Etienne responded with a smile. And Phil Coulson's child is a little older and also in her teens. The 2 boys are only 4 or 5 years old. Standing behind her mother, poking her head out, blinking her big eyes, looking at Etienne. Phil Coulson smiled and said, "Don't you all admire Etienne the most? You still want to autograph, why don't you speak now?" Several children lowered their heads and did not speak. "Can you sign it for me?" The eldest daughter Wendy asked, her cheeks flushed, and her palms sweating from excitement. Etienne smiled and took the pen and the pink notebook. "I'm going to prepare supper, you wait a moment," sister-in-law said. Soon, several delicacies were brought up. "Bring out the good wine I put last time. I won't be going back to SHIELD today. Have a good drink," Phil Coulson said. A smile flashed across his face. Phil Coulson is very busy on weekdays and rarely at home. A large cask of wine was brought up. After the 3 fell down, Lorna said lightly, "I want to drink too." The other 3 children are also eager to try. In the end, there was only half a glass of wine in front of Lorna. After a while, the 3 children fell asleep. The 4 of them drank and drank, feeling something was wrong. "There is a dryness in my heart." With a strange expression on his face, Phil Coulson picked up the wine and looked at it, then pulled his wife and walked towards the bedroom. Etienne clearly saw the 3 words above. Aphrodisiac wine. A cup of 1 cup is a pillar of the sky, and a bed of 2 cups can't stand it. Still in Chinese. Made in China, it must be a high-quality product. The 4 of them drank a few caddies, but they still got it. Etienne and Lorna returned to the room respectively. Lying on the bed, Etienne couldn't sleep anyway. "Oh shit, this wine is too strong, I can't hold it anymore." Creak, creak, hearing the voice next door, the corners of Etienne's mouth twitched. "Otherwise, go find Harley Quinn, or Natasha Romanoff." Just then, Lorna's voice came from the door. "Etienne, are you asleep?" Lost the hustle and bustle of the city, the houses in the suburbs can hear the buzzing of insects. The trees exude a characteristic aroma. Make it easier to sleep. However, for the 4 people who drank aphrodisiac wine, it's been a tough night. Etienne was lying on the bed, a dry heat rose in his body. An indescribable impulse grew in my mind, and moved down from the big end to the small end. Just when he couldn't bear it anymore, there was a knock on the door. Then came a pretty voice. "Etienne, are you asleep?" "I'm coming in." Immediately, the doorknob flicked manually. Facing the bright moonlight, Etienne saw the slim Lorna standing outside the door. Lorna was wearing thin pajamas. The slender jade legs are round and straight. Exposed to the air just like that. "I'm not feeling well." Lorna was short of breath. A rare flush appeared on the unruly and cold face. I've been drunk, not like this. Lorna's breathing became more and more heavy, and she walked slowly to the edge of the bed and sat down. For some reason, she felt that there was a good smell on Yi Tian's body, which was crazily attracting her. Like a bee smelling a flower, it can't stop. Most importantly, the love in my heart keeps fermenting. Let her sanity be clouded. Relying on instinct, I came to Yi Tian's room. Facing the moonlight, Lorna's aloof facial features became softer. The moonlight poured on the beautiful face. Tiny fluff, as if sprinkled with a layer of diamond dust. It's bright and beautiful, beautiful and eye-catching. Lorna. Yi Tian swallowed hard. The rosy white Lorna is as attractive as an apple. But, the other party is not yet of age. Hoo-hoo. Yi Tian suppressed his impulse. With great perseverance, he calmed down strangely. Definitely, it might also have something to do with Kryptonian bloodlines. Adjusted the aphrodisiac. Yi Tian, I'm so hot. Lorna was furious. Looking at Yi Tian, who is thinking about it, his eyes are blurred. Clothes come off. Beautiful face, beautiful proportions. Lorna slipped under the covers. A small head was exposed outside. The light green hair sticks to the face, adding a touch of cuteness. The palm moves slightly, delicate and tender. Everything hit Yi Tian's nerves. Anyway, it's more than 14. With a cock crow. The sun rose slowly. Holding a cup of coffee, Phil Coulson sat on the steps on the first floor, looking at the distant sky with a dazed expression. Beside him was his wife with a resentful face. Behind them, the creaking of the bed can be heard vaguely. Look at others, look at you. I drank so much wine for nothing. Phil Coulson froze. Half an hour is fine. Who the hell would have thought that meeting a pervert? Time flies, and it is noon in a blink of an eye. Phil Coulson's eyes were numb. His wife's eyes became more resentful. The three children didn't understand why the mother, who had always been gentle, became very irritable and drove them to the yard to play. Mom, is Yi Tian big brother sawing wood? Really sister, let's help too. At this moment, there was a sudden bang in the room. Everyone was shocked. After a while, Yi Tian walked out refreshed. As expected of a level 5 mutant. Physical fitness far exceeds normal people. What a great night. Moreover, with a slight movement of his fingers, the steel nails in the distance shook. Magnetic control, here we go. Congratulations to the host for breaking the ring. Cumulatively break the precept 10 times, get a crit reward tool. Acquired variant ability, 7 elements control. Gold, wood, water, fire, earth, wind, thunder. Yi Tian's eyes lit up. Control of 7 abilities. You know, like Storm Girl, she can become a level 5 mutant just by controlling the wind. Even after strengthening, reach the Omega level. And Yi Tian is controlled by 7 elements. If they are used well and matched with each other, they will be absolutely heaven-defying. Good things come in pairs, good things come in pairs. With his own strength, he finally got Fei Ren again. And all of this is thanks to Lorna. Sister-in-law, help me cook something. Lorna was so tired that she fell asleep. I'll serve it to her later. Yi Tian smiled and opened his mouth. The sister-in-law nodded. Okay, I'll go get ready now. Whenever, I can also experience being tired enough to fall asleep. The gentle eyes fell on Phil Coulson, coupled with the yin and yang tone. Let the latter feel uncomfortable. What's wrong? Yi Tian asked knowingly. Phil Coulson rolled his eyes. Schefter. Yi Tian, you. Lunch is ready. It is delicious beef brisket rice. Yi Tian came to the house. Lorna just woke up. Beside her, the bloodstains of bright red plum blossoms were particularly obvious. His face was still pale. Seeing Yi Tian, his heart ached unceasingly. The man was too persistent, and he still couldn't do it. Come on, let me feed you. Yi Tian picked up the spoon. Be careful, it's hot, take your time. Lorna ate, and burst into tears. Holding Yi Tian's chest, the snow-white fragrant shoulders couldn't help shaking. What's the matter, Lorna? Yi Tian patted Lorna's back lightly. The cold and smooth feeling made his mind sway again. No one has ever been so kind to me. Yi Tian, promise me not to leave me, okay? Lorna's voice choked up. She has not seen her father since she was a child. My mother is also addicted to alcohol and doesn't care about her at all. She had a miserable childhood, so she could only board in other people's homes. However, all of this is because of her good looks. And the family who adopted her had a lame and silly son. She was later imprisoned in Escalate Castle as research target. It was not until I met Etienne that unfortunately changed. A bitter life is also a little sweeter. Okay, I promise you. Etienne rubbed Lou's head. Polaris Lorna, level 5 mutant. In the extraordinary ability, he is even more cold and unruly mutant leader. However, who would have known such a strong woman? After escaping from Escalate Castle, he was sent to a mental hospital. Also constantly tortured, replaced by mental illness, mania. However, since she has become her own woman, all this will not happen again. Meanwhile, Stark building. Tony is studying the wreckage from the explosion on the first floor. In front of him is a three-dimensional virtual network layer structure. This is a technology that even the military of the lighthouse country does not have. His technology has been decades ahead of the entire world. It is no exaggeration to say that Tony deserves the title of the chosen son. However, he met Etienne, a man who shines like the sun. Any outstanding person can only pay the same stars. Illuminated to be invisible. Explosion can become 3000 degrees high temperature. Operator investigates similar events, said Tony. If you don't check, you don't know. If you check, you will be shocked. There have been many similar explosions in the whole world. Tony, you haven't closed your eyes for 3 days. Pepper Potts said worriedly. We can ask Etienne for help. Tony shook his head. No, I can handle everything, don't forget I'm Iron Man. Strong self-esteem, giving him strong self-confidence. In his opinion, there is nothing he cannot accomplish. He walked quickly to the laboratory. Start implanting sensors under the skin. These can summon warframes via satellite signals. Is his latest outlandish idea. Tony rubbed between his brows. He was very tired after not sleeping for a long time. Ever since he was poisoned by palladium element, he had a kind of anxiety in his heart. The terrorist bombing incident aggravated this anxiety. In his hand, there are several messy sketches. Anti-Hulk armor and anti-ETN armor can be vaguely seen. Why did you lose the anti-Superman armor? Potts asked. On the ground, there is a discarded draft paper. The various abilities of Superman are analyzed above. Superman is dead, Tony replied. Potts picked up the draft and clutched it in his hand, put it on the table. De nuo Jiao, this is your painstaking effort. JARVIS, take the 3 drafts for analysis and make a battle armor. After a while, he spoke again. His expression was a little dignified. Pause, from now on, I appoint you as the CEO of Stark Group. From now on, it will take effect. Pause's eyes widened, his face full of disbelief. Really? Really? Yes, ma'am, don't doubt yourself, your ability is competent enough. And I just hope that I have time to research a better armor. Quote. Potts left the room with incredible surprise on his face. At the same time, she received an invitation. Aldridge Killian, biotechnology, regeneration of severed limbs, collaboration C. She tidied up and walked outside. After she left, Tony's personal bodyguard, Happy, drove behind. Protecting Potts and watching Potts is the task Tony gave him. At the same time, in the mansion, Smart JARVIS has surveyed the entire web for information. Aldridge Killian and Hannah, a PhD in biology, did research on the subject a few years ago, and the product of failure is very similar to an explosion. However, Tony was studying the armor and did not allow anyone to disturb him. Potts, on the other hand, has already met Killian. In the lobby on the first floor, people come and go. Gentleman Killian helped Posy open the door. Miss Potts, I will cover up for you, my achievements. Potts was very cooperative. Smile slightly. Stark Industries not only has arms business, but also has many other projects. Such as angel investment. Use your own unique vision to discover some potential huge amounts of research. Give financial support. Reach a two-way cooperation with poor scientific researchers. Once successful, it will bring huge benefits. The two entered the building. There are quite a few people inside. Killian found a quieter place. Throw out a few projectors. After a burst of light blue light, many streamlined rays of light appeared out of thin air around. In some places, there is a little bit of bright light. It looks mysterious and beautiful. Is this the universe? Potts asked in amazement. No, it's the brain. Killian had a confident frenzy on his face. We're standing in the center of the brain right now. With a flick of the finger, a localized area keeps zooming in. A wormhole-like center emerges. It's amazing, there is a wormhole in the middle of our brains, which means we have infinite possibilities. Just a little change in the gene sequence. We will generate huge amounts of energy, and even achieve regeneration of severed limbs. Killian's face was intensely fanatic. Then he moved closer to Potts, almost touching the latter. But Potts' attention was all on the beautiful scene in front of him. Didn't notice that the position of the two is very close. Happy followed behind secretly. The seemingly obese body is surprisingly flexible. In front of him was a young man with an inch cut. It's Killian's bodyguard. He gave a potion to a lame man with a broken leg. Talking to each other. Happy looked at it, then looked away. Take out a tablet to cover your face. His eyes locked on the two of Posey, with anger on his chubby face. Tony, your pepper, is incredibly close to someone right now. Mr. She Stark is busy, all messages go to voicemail. The corners of the wall have been dug out, and I'm still busy. Happy said angrily. He could see that Tony treated Potts very differently. As an old man who is by Tony's side, Tony's so-called assistants are changed almost every day. Pepper Potts, on the other hand, stayed by Tony's side. And is getting more and more attention. After thinking about it, he decided to stand up. Miss Potts, the boss asked me to take you back to the company. Potts nodded. Only at this time did I realize that the distance with Killian was too close. Hastily took 2 steps back. Miss Potts, how are you? Are you interested in participating in this research? Killian asked with a smile. I invite you on behalf of the team. Here, you can find the value of existence, instead of being a small assistant with Stark Tony. The allure of this sentence is very great, especially for highly educated intellectuals. Potts is a very talented man. It's a pity to be an assistant all the time. To be honest, Potts was a little moved. Killian's description has shown the practicality of this experiment. Once successful, there will be an uproar in the whole world. As the saying goes, settle the affairs of the king and win the fame of life and death. Being able to make one's name appear in books and be remembered by many people is everyone's dream. Potts is no exception. Miss Potts, the boss is in a hurry, let's go. Happy said again. Whatever you want, the boss can give you. Killian had an angry look on his face, with veins popping out on his forehead. You simple-minded fellow, what do you know? Even Tony couldn't have found a better study than this. The sudden rage made Posey take 2 steps back in fright. Miss Potts, this opportunity is very rare. Killian took a deep breath and showed a gentlemanly smile again. Potts clenched his fist and let out a breath. Never mind. As soon as these words came out, the atmosphere suddenly became awkward. Why, what's so good about Tony Stark? Killian's chest heaved constantly and his voice was low. From the neck, there appeared a series of fine red lines. It was as if magma was flowing inside. The pupils of Bozaime's eyes contracted. She had seen this scene before. Related to the terrorist attack on Stark Industries. Happy didn't know the exact details of the bombing. However, the instinct of the bodyguard made him aware of a crisis. Without the slightest hesitation, he pulled Potts back and retreated. And at this moment, a young man with a cut hair came over. He blocked behind with a cold face. Run. Happy pushed Potts hard. The latter fled in a hurry. Even kicked the shoes away. Get rid of him, Killian said coldly, then turned and left. Kun-Tu nodded and approached Happy. You're not my match. Get out of the way. Happy put on a boxing pose and put on his knuckles. He punched it out. As a boxer, his actual combat ability is not weak. Otherwise, it wouldn't be Tony's driver and bodyguard. The punch was like the wind, and it slammed into Kun-Tu's face. The sharp fist directly smashed the latter's face. Not bad. Kun-Tu sneered and moved his fingers. From the wound on the face, red liquid emerged. The wound then heals. Happy was startled, and punched him again. However, this time it was easily dodged. AEDJ. His palms are held. Inch's palms turned red. The terrifying high temperature distorted the surrounding space slightly. Ah! Happy screamed, his knuckles gradually melting. The terrifying high temperature made his fists ache. The severe pain made him generate huge amounts of strength. Barely broke free from control. Kun-tu slowly approached again, with a disdainful smile on his face. At this moment, there was a scream in the distance. In the entire hall, everyone was shocked. Turning his head to look, it was a man kneeling on the ground and howling in pain. Beside him is an empty potion. When everyone saw this, they approached the past and wanted to ask what happened. Seeing this, Kun-tu's face suddenly changed. Back quickly. Happy was still wondering. I saw the man lying on the ground trembling all over, with red lines appearing on the surface of his body. Around him, space warped. The nearby papers burst into flames without warning. Click. The man's body split open. Boom. The fire lights up. Terrifying air swept around. The explosion was mixed with high temperature and turned into shockwave. Directly destroy everything around. Before Happy could react, he was hit hard by Chen. The magnificent hall has become a mess. On the ground, a huge amounts of deep pit appeared. Happy endured the severe pain in his body. Use all your strength to point to the left front. There is an empty potion bottle. He believed that with Tony's intelligence, he would be able to investigate this matter clearly. Afterwards, Happy's consciousness gradually blurred. Slowly closed his eyes. Crash. Not far away, among the ruins, Tuantu crawled out. But now he is extremely miserable. A thigh was directly blown off. The body is also full of scars. However, an amazing scene appeared. His disappearing thigh actually began to recover. Soon after, many police officers came to the scene. Potts followed in a panic. Saw Harpy lying on the ground, bruised and bruised. He's still breathing, hurry to the hospital. The policeman said. In the hospital, Happy was almost mummified. There are many tubes inserted in the body. On the instrument, the heartbeat is very slow, as if it could die at any time. Tony looked gloomy and said nothing. Potts stood beside him with a sad look on his face. Tony stood up and turned on the TV. Find a show. It's Happy's favorite Downton Abbey. It's his favorite show, and it feels elegant and resonant. Tony was silent for a long time, looking at Happy, his eyes flashed with extremely suppressed anger. He took a deep breath and walked out. Outside, many reporters surrounded Tony. What about this attack, Starks? Mr. Stark, when will you kill these terrorists? Hello, I don't know what you will do in the face of this provocation. The reporters couldn't wait to speak. For them, this is great news. I want to have a word with the terrorists. My name is Tony Stark. I'm not afraid of you. I know, you're a fool, so I'm going to kill you. It has nothing to do with politics, nothing to do with justice, it's just old-fashioned revenge drama. I will kill you with my own hands. If you are a man, remember what I say. Quote. My home address is No. 10,880, Malibu Port, zip code 90,266. Tony's anger exploded. The chest rises and falls constantly. The near death of the people around him made him feel extremely angry. This time, he will abandon all morality and kindness, and kill all these terrorists who commit all kinds of crimes. In a clear sky, the sun hangs in the middle. It exudes temperature feebly. Under the shade of a tree, Yitian was lying in a rocking chair. The sun shines through the leaves, casting mottled shadows. With the cool summer wind, it changes shape. A rare leisure time. Under the light of the light spots, Yitian's face looked extremely holy. There is no task recently, so I took a day off. Lorna curled up in Yitian's arms. Under the green hair, the big sparkling eyes looked at Yitian with love. This rebellious and arrogant girl, only when facing Yitian, will she be as obedient as a kitten. Phil Coulson is not far away, playing games with his children. His wife was sitting aside, watching with a smile, her plump buttocks facing Yitian. Everything is so beautiful. Suddenly, Phil Coulson stood up, his face became ugly, and he walked over quickly. Yitian, something serious happened. Something happened to Tony. Hearing this, Yitian's pupils shrank slightly. What happened? Phil Coulson tapped his phone. A translucent virtual screen appeared in midair. A video was playing inside. In the steep bay, on the edge of the cliff is a unique sea view villa with several floors. At this time, a woman with long brown hair entered the room. Immediately afterwards, 3 helicopters flew from the sky in the distance. The rumbling sound spread all around. The propeller whipped up the wind. Then several missiles bombarded the villa in a straight line. A violent explosion sounded, followed by terrifying destructive force, directly tearing apart most of the villa. Rocks collapsed. The floor is broken. The broken house walls fell on the sea, causing large waves. The whole villa is slowly tilted. Through the smoke and dust, Etienne clearly saw that Tony waved his hand, and the parts of the battle armor flew over. However, these armors did not protect Tony in the first place. Instead, it was wrapped around Pepper Potts. This vicious-mouthed, arrogant and complacent guy. Always choose to sacrifice yourself and protect the people around you at critical times. Hurry up and take Hannah away. Tony yelled, anxious on his face. The sudden attack made him panic. Potts didn't have the slightest hesitation. This woman with a superior IQ made a judgment in the first place. Only when she leaves, Tony can feel at ease. Only then can an effective counterattack be made. Thinking of this, Potts hugged Hannah and quickly ran outside. With the help of intelligent JARVIS, some basic actions are still no problem. Watching Potts leave, Tony rolled over on the ground. Try your best to avoid the surrounding stones. He gasped heavily, his clothes were scratched by the gravel, and bright red blood seeped out. A piece of cement fell off from the top of his head and hit him straight. The cement block weighed 1,000 caddies. If it fell on him, it would kill this world-famous genius directly. There was a rare look of despair in Tony's eyes. A feeling of palpitation and panic paralyzed his limbs. Boz arrives at a safe location. The voice of JARVIS suddenly sounded. Tony waved his arms. There is no reaction around. The cement blocks fell straight down. Tony could even feel the falling wind, pressing his hair against his scalp. There was a trace of despair and panic in his eyes. Boom! Just at this critical moment, the armor's hand flew over. Smash the cement directly. The cement split into countless pieces. Immediately afterwards, the rest of the armor also flew over. Tony turned into Iron Man again. He fires 2 beams of energy. Shoot down both helicopters. However, one of the remaining helicopters fired another missile. The terrifying energy made the armor slightly shapeshifting. With huge amounts of impact force, Iron Man was blasted directly into the sea. The remaining half of the villa directly hit the sea surface, setting off huge amounts of waves. The helicopter's propeller whirred, then it flew into the distance. Time passed by every minute and every second. The figure of Iron Man suddenly appeared on the sea surface, and then he flew towards TN Doctor one after another. Due to satellite limitations, it is not known what happened under the sea. However, the only thing that is certain is, Tony Stark has the biggest crisis ever. Lives are at stake. After watching the video, I'm afraid it's up to you, Phil Coulson said. In this situation, the points are tighter. Only Etienne can quickly resolve this crisis. Etienne's phone rang. It was Dr. Strange's. Miss Potts is looking for you. Where are you? Etienne stood up. Lorna, you stay here. Lorna nodded. With a movement of Etienne's body, the whole person disappeared. Phil Coulson hurried to the backyard and opened the military house. Driving a car, disappeared in the end of sight. New York, in an apartment. Potts sat on a chair, looking anxious. Wanda stared at Potts with a bad look. Harley Quinn raised her white legs, watching TV contentedly. Dr. Strange eyed Potts. Another type of beauty. Etienne's charm is really great. The beauties of the rooms, none are the same in style. Call. A gust of wind blows. Etienne's figure suddenly appeared in the room. Etienne, you're back. Harley Quinn jumped up from the sofa with a bang. Hugging Etienne with a happy smile on his face. Mr. Etienne, please save Tony. Potts briefly explained the matter. Knowing that the woman in front of her had nothing to do with Etienne, Deputy Chief Wanda breathed a sigh of relief. But when she saw Harley Quinn hanging on Etienne's body, her pretty face turned cold again. She wants to be close to Etienne. However, her inner character made her unable to let go of this face. Okay, I see. Let's take a look at the explosion site first, Etienne said. Potts nodded. The two disappeared in place. The entrance, the luxurious sea view villa, has been turned into ruins. Potts' eyes darkened, show worry and sadness. June, Etienne shouted in a low voice. A black mist suddenly appeared in the sky. The witch June's eyes turned dark, and a blood-stained cloth in the distance fell into her hand. Above the head, several stones appeared. Master, it takes 5 minutes, June said. Yi Tian nodded. The foundation of the whole villa is very large. From here, you can see the whole sea. When the sun rises, it must be very beautiful. It may cost hundreds of millions to build such a villa. This is a huge sum that ordinary people cannot reach. However, for a top local tyrant like Tony, it is no different from a toy. Stepping on the ruins, I came to the seaside. The sea breeze has a salty smell, and it smells very comfortable. Boys like the sweetness in a woman's mouth. Only men, Tuan would like a woman salty. Posy followed, and for some reason, she couldn't see through Yi Tian, nor did she know the latter's attitude. Mr. Yi Tian, please save Tony. We can promise you any conditions. The entire Stark industry, because part of it was supported by Tony alone. If Tony had an accident, the entire company would be greatly impacted. At that time, the economy of the entire lighthouse country will go backwards. 0. Moreover, after experiencing this life and death crisis, she found out. Already unconsciously, fell in love with Tony. Thinking of Tony having an accident, her heart flustered. Yi Tian's eyes fell on Posy's delicate body. A smile appeared on his face. I need to be paid. Tony is so rich and technologically advanced. Own vibranium long knife in the last battle. Cracked by Superman's Man of Steel. Needs to be fixed. By the way, you can use Tony's technology. Update it. Made the vibranium long knife sharper. I understand. Bo's voice pulled Yi Tian out of his thoughts. When he looks like Potts again. Can't help taking a breath. I saw Posy in front of me, even taking off his clothes. The tall figure exudes a holy light under the moonlight. The sea breeze blew, and the long golden hair swayed. On the intellectual face, there was 3 points of shyness, 3 points of helplessness, and 4 points of desolation. Look down. The chest is small but present. Those straight and round legs are surprisingly long. Yi Tian is confident that none of the women she has met has long legs like Posy. This leg, for a lifetime. Looking up, the mysterious, is even more nosebleed. The scene in front of him can make any man lose his mind. Master, it's done. The voice of the witch June sounded. Yi Tian came to his senses. A trace of speechlessness flashed across his face. Paz looked at intellect, unexpectedly so wild. It is worthy of the nickname of Little Pepper. Pull out the long vibranium knife and point to the crack above. Help me rebuild it. This is the reward. Paz looked disbelieving. Yi Tian smiled wryly. What else? Posy's face was flushed, and he quickly took off his clothes to cover the key parts. Yi Tian looked at it intently. Don't look, Potts screamed. At this moment, she is embarrassed and wants to leave the earth. Yi Tian turned and left, teasing, you have a good figure. Potts' face turned even redder. In the sky, a silver-white light flashed across. Then it fell straight down. A car is approaching. Bang! The light goes off, revealing the Iron Man inside. Rumble. Iron Man kept rolling. Throw Tony in it to pieces. Waited a moment, always unable to manipulate the warframe. Tony suppressed his nausea and spoke. Jarvis, turn on the armor, I want to go out. Accompanied by a clicking sound. Tony stood up now. Hiss. It's so cold. Surrounding him was a field of ice and snow. Soft and white snowflakes cover everything. Tony had only one thin shirt on, which was still torn. Hoo-hoo. The cold wind howled. Jarvis, why did you bring me here? Tony shivered, his limbs numb from the intense cold. You must know that the lighthouse country is still Sha Tian at this moment, and it is actually winter here. One can imagine how far he flew when he was unconscious. This is set by Mr. Stark in advance. Hearing this, Tony froze for a moment. Immediately, his eyes sharpened, and his face was colder than the surrounding winter. Mandarin. Since Harpy was injured, he began to constantly study things about explosions. In the end, the spearhead was directed at Mandarin. And, following Mandarin, is a doctor of mechanics called Killian. Also, the secret of the human body explosion. That was the result of a one-night stand with a doctor of biology, Hannah, a few years ago. Originally used to regenerate severed limbs. But it unexpectedly triggered some kind of special change. Allows people to gain huge amounts of strength. And can generate high temperature, destroy everything. Killian gathered a large number of dismembered mercenaries and soldiers. These soldiers fought for the lighthouse country. After an accident, it was thrown away like a piece of trash. With huge amounts of rage, they embarked on a terrorist attack. It is even connected with such a heinous villain as Mandarin. And this experiment also has huge amounts of danger. If it fails, it will explode. This is also the reason for Harpy's injury in the hull. Let's go. Tony found a few canes and tied the battle armor. How can it be so heavy? The battle armor that was once life-saving lost its energy and became a complete burden after being damaged. I want to think about it and invent a light, portable armor. At the same time, a big event happened in the whole lighthouse country. The security network of the entire White House was breached. Mandarin's avatar appears on every screen. This is middle-aged and elderly people whose breath is longer than their hair. He looked fierce. From now on, agree to any of my conditions, otherwise, I will kill your congressman. The president frowned, and the rest of the congressmen continued to sneer. Members of parliament are the country's top priority. Every security force is extremely terrifying. How could there be no sound? Captured by terrorists. Ridiculous. The camera shakes a bit. At his feet is a counselor. Everyone froze for a moment. A minute later, there was a bang of gunfire. Blood splashed across the screen. The president was stunned, and so were the other congressmen. What followed was a wave of fear from the bottom of my heart. A strong sense of horror made them feel cold hands and feet in a warm room. The MP is dead. Killed by a terrorist just like that. Fact. It's a threat, it's a threat. We have to find a way to destroy him. Lighthouse country, this guy is not allowed to exist. The MPs roared. My heart was full of panic. Mandarin can catch MPs, and it can catch them. As a result, everyone's own safety has become a problem. Notify Colonel Rhodes. The president's face changed twice, and finally said in a deep voice. Hearing this, the rest of the MPs breathed a sigh of relief. Colonel Rhodes is not scary. The scary thing is that he has a set of battle armor. Warframe contributed by Stark Tony. After being modified by the United States, a large number of lethal weapons have been added. Possesses more terrifying destructive power than Iron Man. It is a big killer for siege and looting land and performing individual combat missions. War machine. With him, those will definitely be wiped out. Very well, we can cheer in advance. The MPs all smiled. With a burst of mechanical sound, the silver-white metal shone with an icy luster. Embellished with red and blue colors, added even more domineering. Whoosh! The war machine burst through the air. Blazing white light scorches space, leaving a clear twisting path of the day in the sky. This battle armor is a little less flexible than Tony's, but the lethality in battle is even greater. Somewhere in the Middle East, the war machine comes down. He stared coldly at the small earthen house in front of him. Be instructed that this is a gathering place for terrorists. Also the base of the villain Mandarin. War machine kicked open the wooden door, and the guns in the play aimed at the house. Raise your hands. A cold voice sounded, however, to Colonel Nered's surprise. Inside the room were a group of women in black robes with their heads and faces surrounded. This is a local custom. Women are of low status and cannot show their faces. Otherwise, it will be considered infidelity. Spurned by all. In front of Rhodes, there are several screens. One of them is connected to the White House headquarters. Rod, how is the situation? Rhodes said helplessly. Here are a group of women with no strength to restrain chickens. Not to mention weapons, I haven't even seen metal hair. Control the armor to put down the weapon. All the women in the room ran out screaming. Rhodes put down his guard and prepared to leave. After all, he wouldn't attack a few women, especially those who didn't have any offensive power. At this time, he suddenly felt a terrifying high temperature. The scorching air wave was perceived by the armor. Rhodes stared, and his heart jumped up. In the black robe in front of him, stretched out two hands. The whole is red, exuding unparalleled high temperature. The power system of the armor was instantly destroyed. War machine crashed to the ground zero. The black robe was taken off. It's a blonde American woman. Rhodes' scalp inside was numb. There was a terrible wave in my heart. A fear of being shrouded in conspiracy made cold sweat run down his back. My own arrival is a high-level meeting of the Beacon country, arriving temporarily. How could Mandarin know? And, the power system of War Machine is very hidden. However, the woman in front of her destroyed the power system as soon as she made a move. If no one informed in advance, this kind of thing is impossible to happen. Several people came over and transported the War Machine away. Soon, War Machine was sent to a luxurious manor. He was tied up with several chains and hung up. Several people were holding cutting machines, and sparks flew everywhere. But it didn't hurt a little armor. Alloys from Tony Stark, even if not comparable to vibranium and adamantium, are not easily broken. Take off your armor quickly, you. Fact, I don't believe you can hide in this turtle shell forever. Several people cursed angrily, and smashed their fists fiercely on the battlefield. As a result, I bared my teeth and cracked my mouth in pain. I see what you can do to me. Rhodes taunted in the armor. After a while, War Machine's power system will recover. At that time, he can easily get out of trouble and counter-kill the opponent. Thinking of this, he was still excited. After all, they are now in the opponent's base camp. Mandarin should be right here. Save yourself the time of searching. At this time, the sound of clapping suddenly sounded in the distance. Killian walked over with a smile on his face. As expected of Colonel Rhodes, he is so patient. Don't worry, I can stay in the armor until you die. Rhodes teased. Killian shrugged his shoulders and looked at the War Machine with demented eyes. I hope you can stay a little longer. Then, his palms began to glow red. A series of terrifying temperatures quickly turned the armor's chest red. At the same time, inside the armor, Smart constantly issues warnings. The temperature is too high, 45. 65. Fact. Rhodes cursed, and the War Machine opened instantly. He jumped into the air and punched the person in front of him. Then pick up the stick on the ground and aim it at Killian. However, a scene that frightened him appeared. Killian's eyes were red, and patterns appeared on his face. Boom! A flame burst out. The terrifying temperature instantly raised the surrounding temperature. Several people's hair was slightly curled up. Because Rhodes is closer. So the feeling is closer to real. His skin tingled all the time. Iron bars melted. Rhodes was so scared that he quickly threw it away. It's not fair, you breathe fire. With a wave of Killian's hand, several people controlled Rhodes. Then, the Killian bodyguard, that one went over the head into the War Machine. The president is on a plane and he's going to visit a foreign country, you go on the plane and kill him. War Machine nodded, and then flew towards the distant sky. At this moment, on the edge of the sea cliff, June has found where Tony is. Yi Tian nodded. After entrusting Posy with a word, he flew towards the distant sky. His speed was very fast, and he disappeared from the end of sight in the blink of an eye. After hesitation, Potts decided to do something. She rushed to the private hospital, ready to find Hannah, in order to learn more about the inside story. At that time, you can tell Tony all the secrets through JARVIS. She came to the hospital soon. Hannah was sitting on the edge of the bed, in a daze. For this girl who had a one-night stand with Tony, Paz had an inexplicable feeling in his heart. Hi Hannah, I'm Potts, we met. Hannah turned around with tired eyes. Hello, Miss Potts. Paz knew that the woman in front of him was a good person. Otherwise, he would not risk his life to inform Tony of danger. However, she was still one step too late. Can you tell me about your research? Reminiscence flashed in Hannah's eyes. After a moment of silence, he nodded slowly. Did you know that there are many people with disabilities in this world, they may be congenital or acquired? This experiment was originally for Broken Limb Reborn. I found it in plants. We formed an organization, together to fight for this goal, we call it Extremis. During that time, it was really hard, but we were all very happy. With the progress, we had no money. At this time, Killian appeared, and he invested in our project. However, the following things are gradually no longer under our control. Killian is loyal to Mandarin, a terrorist organization. Under the corruption of money, the people in the organization gradually degenerate and lose their original intentions. Potts nodded, indicating that he was listening. To put it simply, Killian gave too much, and they couldn't bear the temptation. I don't know when, Killian found a lot of people who were wounded on the battlefield. They fought for the country and were injured for the country, but they didn't receive the rewards they deserved, and those once supreme badges couldn't even be exchanged for a single piece of bread. When Hannah said this, her expression was a little dripping. Maybe something came to mind. Potts was also silent. This kind of thing is the most sad. When the heroes return home, what awaits them is not cheers and flowers, but a strange society. Those who have lost their limbs cannot even find ordinary jobs. They burned lives and dragged down countries. However, the country kicked them away mercilessly. Like garbage. They, who were full of resentment towards the country, participated in the extremis experiment. Those who succeeded gained huge amounts of strength, and lost limbs grew back again. I don't know when. There are already tens of thousands of such extremis fighters by Mandarin's side. Hearing this, Potts gasped. Tens of thousands of people. This statistic made her scalp tingle. Most importantly, this is just the beginning. More people will join later. There is no shortage of disabled people in this world. She had seen the terrifying destructive power of extremis firsthand. Worse than bombs. And these humanoid bombs actually followed a terrorist. How horrible. Thinking of the consequences, Posey's whole body turned cold. The most important thing is that these human bombs cannot be detected by instruments. This means that they can board the plane and take the subway. At that time, in a crowded place, there will be an explosion. The order of the entire society will fall apart in people's panic, and finally disappear completely. Bang! The door of the room was opened suddenly. "Sir, you can't go in," the young nurse at the door said. She looked terrified, looking at the three men in front of him. "Hello, Miss Nurse, my name is Killian." The leading man smiled slightly. "How can you stop a gentleman?" Killian tilted his head and smiled. The head nurse let out a sigh of relief. Fortunately, she met a more easy-going person. However, at this moment, Killian made a sudden move. He pinched the nurse's chin directly. Instant shapeshifting for that collagen-filled face. The nurse's eyes were full of horror, and she wanted to break free, but found that her hands were like steel bars. "What are you doing?" Two security guards reprimanded loudly, and ran over with electric batons in their hands. Bang bang. Killian pulled out a pistol in his other hand and killed the two security guards. The guard saw a dead man and screamed because of the sound. Killian frowned, hands turning red. The girl's voice stopped abruptly. The beautiful face disappeared in an instant. Only the cracked skull remained. Hearing the sound, Hannah was shocked. "No, he found us." Posey also quickly stood up. "Who?" The two were about to flee outside when they saw Killian. "Hello, Miss Potts." Killian smiled. "We meet again." He waved. The bodyguard behind him directly controlled Posey. Immediately, Killian turned his head to look at Hannah, and said with a half-smile, "You betrayed Mandarin, do you know the consequences?" Hannah's scalp was numb, and drops of cold sweat dripped from her face. "Follow me yourself, or let me do it." Killian put his hands in his pockets, disdain on his face. Hannah's face changed twice, and finally stood beside Hannah silently. And Etienne at the other end has come to Tony at this moment. The latter was fiddling with some tools in a broken house. There are electric heating rods, batteries, and coke. There's even chili powder and fertilizer. These messy things have been transformed into various weapons. As expected of Tony Stark, Etienne couldn't help admiring. If you learn physical chemistry, you will not be afraid to travel all over the world. When the person is still a highly creative genius, some items that can be seen everywhere on weekdays will be transformed into high-tech weapons. Human brains are not the same. Fact, Tony was concentrating on his work when he suddenly heard a sound and was startled. At the same time, cold sweat dripped down his face. The fact that the opponent can approach him quietly means that he has the ability to kill him at any time. Having experienced recent danger, he dared not imagine anyone else. He gripped the glassware tightly in his hand. The extracted solution was shaken and a drop fell to the ground. Scoff. The ground was rapidly corroded into a large pit. He didn't look back immediately, and silently touched the stun gun beside him with his palm. A simple spring mechanism, plus a few batteries, held together with duct tape. It looks rubbish, but it can dump an elephant in an instant. It's not nice to appear behind someone's back. Tony narrowed his eyes slightly. To distract the attention of those behind you. Then the electric shock device in his hand quickly shot towards the back. At the same time, the corrosive solution was also poured to the rear. Then he looked at the person behind him. Yi Tian. Tony saw the person behind him. Quickly exclaimed, "Hurry up and hide." With Yi Tian's finger, a wind wall appeared and blocked it. In fact, it's okay not to hide. These things do him no harm. However, the clothes on the body may be broken. Why are you here? Tony saw Yi Tian with surprise in his eyes. Potts asked me to come. Yi Tian said. For some reason, Bozie's proud long legs suddenly appeared in his mind. Actually, I can solve it. Tony is still stubborn now. Yi Tian was also not used to it, and looked at the downcast Tony. That's right, the famous Iron Man will definitely be able to solve it, you are awesome. Then he joked, "Where's your armor?" Tony's face changed a few times. Your mouth is really vicious. Each other. Tony skipped the subject directly. I found out where Mandarin lives, and Wiggy sneaked into the hospital. Miami, Florida. Yi Tian's figure suddenly appeared. Beside him is Tony, protected by a windshield. Looking at the unfamiliar environment in front of him, Tony was a little confused. Where is this? The address you mentioned. Yi Tian spoke, pointing not far ahead. Hiss. Tony's scalp tingled. Heart set off monstrous waves. The distance of thousands of kilometers has been reached in the blink of an eye. I calculated silently in my heart. He was even more shocked. This speed is hundreds of times faster than the speed of sound. How fast are you? Yi Tian's expression was flat, sublight speed. Tony's eyelids fluttered. As a genius, he deeply understands what it means. Not being able to carry such a fast speed represents Yi Tian's physical strength. It far exceeds the strength of steel, and even reaches the strength of vibranium. There are people like this to help. The atomic collision experiment can get a dramatic improvement. However, these things will be discussed later. The most urgent task is to solve Mandarin first. Which Jun? Yi Tian said. A black mist rose. Jun appeared in the air, stuck out his small tongue, and licked his red lips. She knew that the killing was about to begin. Chapter 91. An overwhelming black mist rose up. Amidst the tumbling black mist, there are gusts of gloomy wind, and there seems to be a demon crawling out of the depths of hell inside. Makes people extremely afraid. The sun has just risen at this moment, and the warm sunlight is pouring down. But beside Yi Tian, there is a large group of black mist, like ink, suspended in the air, rolling continuously. With Jun's finger lifted, the black mist suddenly expanded and shrouded the manor ahead. Are you waiting here, or going together? Yi Tian asked. Tony swallowed. The weird black mist frightened him a little. But with his haughty personality, definitely will not give in, definitely go together. Don't be scared. The stuff that scares me, Tony Stark, hasn't happened yet. Yi Tian didn't say much anymore, and walked towards the manor ahead. In the manor at the moment, the mercenaries with live ammunition were extremely nervous at the moment, looking in horror at the black mist floating in the sky. Fuck, what's this? Crab occasionally, hurry up and be alert. Be careful, everyone be careful. The light that had just risen disappeared in an instant, and the surroundings fell into darkness. These mercenaries are holding guns in their hands. My heart was still trembling with fear. After all, guns don't seem to do much in the face of the unknown. Just when they were extremely panicked, 3 people walked away in the distance. To be precise, it was 2 people. Because there is a woman whose body is translucent and floating in the air. Is constantly changing. Who are you? Don't come here, or I'll shoot you. Don't come here. The unknown terror in this group of well-trained mercenaries created a panic. With the disappearance of the sun, their hearts sank, and their limbs became extremely cold. As the figures gradually approached, huge amounts of terror kept oppressing their nerves. Let them have a sense of vomiting. Shoot, shoot, the mercenary yelled. The rest opened fire. Da da da. The muffled gunshots joined together. Countless bullets poured out. As the bullets spun, they tore through the air, and with sharp tearing air sounds, they enveloped the 3 of Yi Tian. Tony looked slightly nervous. Although he is the famous Iron Man, he is still an ordinary person. A mortal body, even if it is hit by a shuttle of bullets, it will die immediately. He turned his head to look at Yi Tian. Get a little peace of mind. With this kill Superman present, those bullets are nothing to worry about. At this moment, he saw Yi Tian spit out a word softly. Wind. There was a sudden gust of wind around. All the howling bullets were bounced off. Crackling fell all around. The scene suddenly became chaotic. There were a lot of bullet holes on the wall, on the trunk, and on the ground. And several mercenaries, scratched by the rebounded bullets, covered their wounds with frightened faces. Who are you? Fack, you are a devil! They screamed. With endless terror on his face. They are not afraid of fighting, otherwise they would not be mercenaries. But in the face of a monster like Yi Tian, the so-called battle is just meaningless death. This makes them unacceptable. Knowing that it is a certain death, no one will continue to fight. My master's name is Yi Tian. Zhu En's red lips parted slightly. Spit out 2 words. However, these 2 words, like a mountain, completely crushed this group of mercenaries. Then, Tony saw a shocking scene. These mercenaries who were licking blood on their blades screamed and fled towards the back. Run! Oh my God, it turned out to be heaven. How did he come back here? However, the appearance of a voice broke their earth. The cement under their feet was quickly broken. Dirt billows. The earthy smell filled the air, and they felt that the ground under their feet was as soft as cotton. What's going on? My God, help me, this is magic, not witchcraft. The ground squirmed like the surface of the sea. Their bodies sank into the mud. Only the upper body is left outside. Yi Tian had his hands behind his back from beginning to end. With an indifferent expression, he slowly walked towards the interior of the manor. Tony was stunned for a moment, his eyelids were numb, and he hurriedly followed. And Jun also smiled slightly. With a smile on her charming face. The mouth is slightly opened. A few wisps of pitch-black mist penetrated into the mercenaries' nose. Painful expressions appeared on their faces, and their bodies trembled. The face keeps changing. Then, it became pitch black. Crash. Their muscles swell. The strength increased greatly. The face became a blur. Drilled out from the ground and stood behind the witch June. This is occult witchcraft. Once again, it showed the superconductor belonging to ancient humans. June excitedly stuck out his tongue and licked his red lips. Go, my servant, and control everyone. A dozen monsters rushed towards the surroundings immediately. Accompanied by bursts of exclamations, more than a dozen people were brought in front of June. After the same action, a dozen people were reformed again. At this moment, Yi Tian brought Tony to the middle of the manor, the largest castle, without hindrance. This way. I haven't been blocked by anything, which is not bad. Yi Tian said lightly. Tony gulped. He looked at the mercenaries who were half buried in the soil behind him, and the bullets piled up on the ground. The eyelids couldn't help shaking. Is this no resistance? The moment you enter the villa. The 2 came to the hall. There are several people in the room playing mahjong. Rhodes was stripped naked, hanging in the air trembling. After seeing Tony, the colonel didn't care about humiliation. Excitedly shouted, Tony, save me. Intruders. Kill them. What happened to the guards outside? They didn't report. 2 of them had red lines on their faces. Opening his mouth wide, a ball of fiery flames appeared, heading towards Yi Fei. Terrible high temperature swept all around. Be careful, Rhodes exclaimed. He had been in close contact with this flame. Can instantly melt steel. Can breathe fire. Interesting. Yi Tian smiled slightly. With a hook of the finger, the berserk flame stopped and became extremely gentle. It turned into a fiery snake and circled around Yi Tian's side. It spit out a slender tongue of fire vividly. This scene made the entire hall silent. Everyone swallowed involuntarily. Go, Yi Tian said. The fiery snake turned into a red streamer. Quickly turned several ordinary people into a flame. The other 2 extremists injected people roared and rushed towards Yi Tian. However, the fire snake swept across and directly tore the bodies of the 2 people apart. The 2 didn't die immediately, but their disconnected bodies were constantly integrating. Backquote, resilience is not bad. If there are no side effects, it is not much weaker than the super soldier serum. Quote. Yi Tian couldn't help admiring. Then he stomped hard, crushing the heads of the 2 people. Sparks splashed everywhere, and the 2 died completely. Gudong. Both Tony and Rhodes swallowed a mouthful of spit. The eyes looking at Yi Tian are full of horror. Killing is normal, and they have killed people. However, When a person kills, there will be violent ups and downs in his emotions, and the killing intent will emerge. This is uncontrollable and unavoidable. Even a perverted murderer will be hyperactive when killing people. But Yi Tian is different. He killed without a trace of emotional ups and downs. It's not numbness, but a kind of indifference. It's like trampling a few ants to death. Yi Tian fell on Rhodes, this little black stick. The latter's scalp was numb, and he hurriedly said, "My own person, I am my own person." He didn't dare to argue with Yi Tian at all. What is the little black stick? Tony undid the chain. The news said, "Shouldn't you protect the president to go abroad at this point in time?" The war machine was taken away. Rhodes took a deep breath. Quickly pick up the clothes that were taken off and put them on. After taking out his hand and finding that it was intact, he let out a long sigh of relief. "Mr. Vice President, war machine has been taken by terrorists. Don't let him protect the president abroad." On the other end of the phone, the vice president hung up the phone. He looked into the room. The inside is decorated with joy. Hanging full of balloons. Many people gathered together. Several children clapped their hands and sang happy birthday. In the middle is a girl of 6 or 7 years old. She is white and clean, with elegant temperament. Although she is young, she can still see that she is a beauty. "When I grow up, I will be able to fascinate a large number of men." The only fly in the ointment is that there is a faint sadness between her brows. And the reason for all this is because she is missing her left calf. The vice president came over with tenderness on his face. "Daughter, soon, your legs will grow back." The little girl's eyes lit up. "Really?" The vice president nodded. The sadness between the little girl's eyebrows dissipated. A long-lost smile appeared on his face. The vice president looked at the phone and turned it off. And the war machine was robbed, ready to kill the president's news. He didn't tell anyone either. Florida. Rhodes hung up the phone and let out a long sigh of relief. Only the lighthouse country is prepared. Under the powerful firepower, war machine can't get close to the president. "Next, let's go find the Mandarin," Rhodes said angrily. 3 people passed the long corridor. The white walls on both sides are sprayed with various graffiti. The kind that can kill people with obsessive-compulsive disorder. Stuff was piled up everywhere. A piece of fabric is hung on a beer bottle with 3 threads attached to it. This thing is explosive. Yi Tian is thinking whether to put it away and see if it is original. Just look at Rhodes shaking his hand, and the beer bottle is empty. "Shameless," Yi Tian scolded. Tony looked over suspiciously. A trace of embarrassment flashed across Rhodes' face. After hesitation, he said in panic, "Half for one person." "Forget it, keep it for yourself," Yi Tian said. He was just curious about how to wear this kind of clothes. Touched his chin. The fish in the fish pond are all top beauties. But when it comes to the roundness of the buttocks, it is quite warped. Or Harley Quinn and Natasha Romanoff. If there is a chance, let the 2 of them try it. However, Natasha Romanoff's character should be out of the question. Harley Quinn shouldn't say no. This crazy big beauty is always willing to try new things. Holding a gun in his hand, Rhodes walked forward cautiously, his eyes constantly looking around. Demonstrated the quality that a soldier should have. Yi Tian strolled in the courtyard, as if walking in the back garden, with a flat face and no tension at all. The status of the 2 of them was seen by Tony. Can't help but sigh, strength is the last word. The 3 of them quickly came to the end of the passage. It is a room with an open door. The house is very big. It was littered with wine bottles and discarded magazines on the floor. Even, there was a pool table to be seen. On the bed, raised marks could be seen. Rhodes pulled the quilt away violently, aiming the gun in his hand at the bed. However, to everyone's surprise, lying on the bed were 2 tall women. They wear very little clothing. Rhodes swallowed a mouthful of spit, his eyes rolled up and down. Tony glanced subconsciously. "Tisk tisk, man," Yi Tian mocked. Tony asked back, "You didn't see it. What I showed you is different," Yi Tian said. He has clairvoyance. These 2 women seem to be beautiful. But there's something hidden under the fabric. Too dark. "Where is Mandarin?" Rhodes rushed forward, aiming the gun at the 2 women. The other hand was on the woman's abdomen. The voice is low. Yi Tian suspected that he was up to something. "He's going to the bathroom and be back soon." Don't kill us, we don't know anything. At this time, an old man with a beard came out in a daze. Shaking the liquid on his hands, he nestled on the sofa. Turn on the TV without anyone else. Tony and Rhodes looked at each other. See the fear in each other's eyes. To be able to be so calm in a situation where the enemy is outnumbered. It is worthy of the name of Mandarin. Very good. Rhodes raised the gun in his hand. Mandarin, it seems that we need to have a good talk. Fact, how did you get in here? Mandarin on the chair turned his head. He stared blankly at the three of them and exclaimed. He rolled and crawled directly from the chair to his knees on the ground. With horror on his face, his short body kept trembling. He kept kowtowing his head. It has nothing to do with me, I'm just a puppet. He gave me money and a place to live, and I acted for him. I'm a theater actor, everything is fake. The man had horror in his eyes. The messy beard kicked up the dust on the ground like a broom. There was no concealment on the helpless and terrified face. Tony and Rhodes looked at each other. The corners of his mouth twitched. This is what puts the whole world in danger. Mandarin feared by everyone. Also too useless. It's almost like trash. Everything is Killian's fault, Rhodes said. We must find him as soon as possible, otherwise, he will start the next terrorist attack, and by then, more people will die. Tony nodded. But there was something wrong in my heart. But I can't tell. If Mandarin is fake, everything is Killian's manipulation. Then there are many unreasonable places in the middle. In my impression, Killian is just a lonely and poor scientist who doesn't even have a suit. How can you have such a huge power and financial resources in such a short period of time? Tony opened his mouth, a little puzzled between his brows. Yi Tian nodded, understanding what the former said. In this society, the most difficult thing is to make money. It's not that if you have a good idea or good technology, you can get rich. It contains too many things. Like Tony Stark. If it weren't for his father, Howard Stark, he would have left behind a large fortune and a huge company. Even if they have the same ability, they will not become Iron Man. Without financial support, many experiments cannot be done. His eyes cannot be opened. It is almost impossible for Killian to reach such a level in a few years. In the government, someone is helping Killian. Yi Tian added. You can think about who can cooperate with him. Tony shrugged. I never get along with those government guys. The two looked at Rhodes. The latter frowned on his dark face. But, Extremis is not perfect, if you fail, you will die. Tony said helplessly. Science is progressing. As long as there are enough resources, pigs can fly into the sky. Besides, you don't know what your government is doing. A fictional Mandarin has caused so much panic and led its mercenaries to burn, kill and loot, what a fortune it is. Rhodes figured out the key, and his face became ugly. If it is really supported by people inside the government, this matter will become a big problem. However, after thinking for a long time, I still had no idea, so I shook my head. In other words, what does Killian have? Yi Tian asked. Extremis, Tony said. Yi Tian snapped his fingers. Rhodes frowned. What does it matter? Extremis has been equated with terrorists. If you want to use it to create an army, you can't use it, and you can't even let others know. Without that high-level person, he would be so brain-dead. Yi Tian sighed helplessly. Sure enough, the vulgar Beacon country soldiers have no IQ. Even at the position of colonel. Broken limb reborn, Yi Tian said helplessly. Think about whose children, or close relatives such as wives, are not healthy. Tony thought for a while, and found that Yi Tian's guess was completely reasonable. I was extremely surprised at the moment. Such a powerful person with such a powerful IQ and reasoning ability is simply terrifying. People in these governments have noble status and rich families. There are not many children with disabilities. When the time comes to investigate directly, it will be clear. Besides, even if not, there is no loss. At the same time, he made up his mind that he must not become an enemy of Yi Tian. Vice President, his daughter has a leg problem. Rhodes stared fiercely and exclaimed. With a flash of inspiration in his head, all the things were connected. The Vice President supports Killian, not only to treat his daughter's legs. You can also get a money-grabbing terrorist gang. Possessing a knife hidden in the dark can help him eliminate those who oppose him. Tony narrowed his eyes slightly. I didn't expect it to be him. Thinking of Harpy, who was lying on the bed, not knowing whether he was alive or dead, his heart burst into flames. Fuck, it's over. Rhodes' complexion changed drastically. He staggered 2 steps, and almost fell. What's the matter? Tony's face was startled. The dignified colonel is also an absolute high-ranking officer in the lighthouse country. What's more, he also has a special identity, the driver of the war machine. Handing over such a big killer to him is enough to prove the country's trust in him. And such a character unexpectedly showed such a shocking scene. It must be a huge thing. Killian's men are driving the war machine to assassinate the president. I contacted the vice president and asked him to notify the president. As soon as these words came out, Tony's scalp tingled. If the president of the United States is killed, the entire Beacon country will fall into chaos. At this time, the vice president took advantage of the situation and won the audience's choice. And once such an idiot becomes the president, the consequences will be disastrous. In an instant, Rhodes' hands and feet were cold, and a bucket of cold water was poured on his head. It was cooler than when it was stripped and hung up. Tony asked, "How long?" "Half an hour." Feeling a little stiff. "What should I do now?" Yi Tian said, "Go to sleep, but there is still good news." The two looked over. Yi Tian spoke again. "You unlocked an achievement, President Ruan died." As soon as these words came out, Rhodes' dark face was so frightened that Doda's cold sweat flowed out. The unprepared president and officials of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs have no room for retaliation in the face of war machine. As for the few bodyguards, they may be very powerful among ordinary people, but facing the steel armor, they can only be simply tortured and killed. "Yi Tian, please save the president," Rhodes begged. As a senior executive of the Beacon country, he is very aware of Yi Tian's strength. After all, with such a powerful person coming out, it is impossible for the lighthouse country to sit idly by. Behind the scenes, Yi Tian's various abilities have already been analyzed in detail. "It's quite interesting to save the president," Yi Tian said. "You go get the vice president, don't let him get away." Rhodes and Tony nodded. It was then seen that Yi Tian disappeared in place. And leaving together, and the witch June. Without the support of magic. The black mist covering the manor dissipated. As for the transformed creature, it hid in the basement. Fell into a deep sleep, waiting for the master's call. The long-lost sun came down. Jeans Rhodes has an unreal sense of dream. In a short period of time, he got too much news. Especially thinking that the president may die for his own reasons. Deep in my heart, there is a kind of extreme panic. At this moment, in faraway New York, the summer sun is not too violent, but still makes people sweat profusely. Separate private airport. A red carpet is spread from the end of sight to the private jet. On both sides are soldiers standing straight in uniform. Their faces are serious, with pride in their faces. Being able to stand here, protect the president, and meet the president is definitely the highest honor. And many reporters are taking photos within a certain distance. The president waved his hand and wore his trademark grin. He believes that in tomorrow's news, he will definitely read the praise of the public opinion saying that he is close to the people. Then, surrounded by many officials, he climbed up the steps. At this moment, there was a roar in the sky. A silver-white battle armor descended. The red and blue pattern shows the identity of the visitor. Wow, it's War Machine, the same armor as Iron Man. What do you know? He is much more powerful than Iron Man. Look at the weapons he is equipped with. Absolute fire suppression. Reporters in the distance exclaimed. The shutter in the hand is constantly pressed. For ordinary people, the president's affairs are far less attractive than war machines. Colonel Rhodes, the president smiled, feeling much more at ease. At this moment, no one knew that the people inside the war machine were no longer General Rhodes. Then got into the plane. War Machine took steps and walked in. Rumble. Blue flames spewed out from the tail of the plane, scorching and distorting the surrounding air. With a slight tremor, under the eyes of everyone, he pulled a long air current and disappeared at the end of his sight. There are many rooms in the plane, and in one of the largest rooms, the president, diplomats, and 2 congressmen hold meetings. A few special forces patrolled outside. Pat, clack. War Machine slowly walked over from a distance. When the patrolling special forces saw this, they stood and saluted with fanaticism in their eyes. For them, Colonel Rhodes is a legend. From an ordinary person, he became a well-known war machine, a superhero who guards the country. That's enough to motivate them all. Facing idols, they only have respect and fanaticism. However, at this time, War Machine made a sudden move. With a wave of his hand, the two soldiers were knocked down to the ground. At the same time, another Warframe arm popped a pistol. Flamethrower. Bullets killed several remaining soldiers. What are you doing, Colonel Rhodes? Are you crazy? The soldiers with him were horrified and shouted in horror. And at this moment, in the conference room on the plane, the president is talking with several people about the precautions for going abroad and the goals to be achieved. Why is it so noisy outside? What's going on with these soldiers? Not sure, but there were no alarms, so it shouldn't be a big deal. Several people from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs spoke. The president rubbed the space between his brows, feeling uneasy for some reason. Boom! There was a loud noise. The hatch of the conference room was directly knocked open. A special soldier was smashed in heavily. His face was covered in blood, and his neck was broken. The head and body present a strange arc. The bright red blood splashed over the conference room with a layer of horror. What happened? Someone attacked. Fark, where is Colonel Rhodes? Everyone exclaimed. In this moment of crisis, only War Machine can solve these crises. Pat, clack, the sound of footsteps sounded. War Machine walked in from the outside, and the silver-white armor was stained with a lot of blood. It seems that a big battle has just been passed. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief. Colonel Rhodes, what happened? Is it a terrorist attack by Mandarin? I heard the voices outside stop. It must be Colonel Rhodes who took care of the intruder. However, they did not wait for any response. The entire aircraft came out the slight roar of the engine. Just the sound of their breathing. In just a few seconds, at this moment, it seemed extremely long. The breathing in the conference room became heavier and heavier. Colonel Rhodes, please talk back. A diplomat bit the bullet and spoke again. Boom, there was a shot. There was an extra bullet hole between the diplomat's eyebrows. Red blood mixed with white liquid flowed out. Plop. The diplomat hit the ground heavily. Eyes wide open, filled with disbelief. At the last moment of his death, he couldn't figure out why War Machine dang shot at him. Colonel Rhodes, what are you doing? My God, you actually shot and killed people. Are you trying to betray the Lighthouse Kingdom? The rest of the people exclaimed. Betrayal, War Machine asked. When everyone heard this voice, their scalps went numb. Because the voice didn't belong to Colonel Rhodes. Who are you? What do you want to do? Don't do anything stupid. The rest of the people were constantly moving backwards. However, the conference room on the plane is not very big. Even if they tried their best, they could only finish one shot within the distance of the War Machine. The mask is open, and it is an inch. There was ferocity on his face. You group of people are still betraying you. Kun Tu looked ferocious, with killing intent in his eyes. My group of soldiers fought bloody battles for the Lighthouse Kingdom. But in exchange for what? When the body is disabled, it is discarded like garbage. There is no guarantee. They can only drag their bodies and look for work. However, the irony is that no one even looked at your soldier's card to join the army. If benefits cannot be created, no one will want them at all. Those warriors who defended their home and country turned out to be a burden and were cast aside by everyone. He wanted to take revenge a long time ago, and wanted to seek revenge from these so-called high-level officials. He pulls the trigger. The bullets spurted out, with a sharp whistling, directly piercing the bodies of several people. Blood splatter, sprayed everywhere. The entire conference hall was filled with a pungent smell of blood, like a hell. President, don't hide. The War Machine knocked the conference table off. The shivering president who crouched on the ground with his head in his arms was revealed. Are you from Mandarin? The president said stubbornly. The corner of Kun Tu's mouth was mocking. You guessed it right, but unfortunately there is no reward. Let me go, we can negotiate. The president swallowed. The fear in his heart was like vines, pulling him into boundless fear. Hee, that's good, you go talk to Mandarin. War Machine started, grabbing the president with one hand, and was about to leave. However, at this moment, the plane that was traveling at high speed suddenly trembled. It was as if something had landed heavily on it. Creak, Creak. Footsteps sounded, which was caused by blood stains. Inch was startled. You know, this place is in a plane traveling at high speed. Those who can suddenly appear on it are definitely not ordinary people. In this instant, there are many superheroes in his head. But no suitable one was found. The one and only Iron Man, maybe 10,000. But in the terrorist attack one day ago, Tony had already sunk into the bottom of the sea along with the villa, turning into a corpse. Kun 2 controlled the battle armor and turned around, but obviously didn't find anyone. Could it be that what happened just now was an auditory hallucination? However, at this moment, a shadow was cast into the corridor by the sunlight. Who are you? Bunny pointed the gun in his hand there. Yi Tian. The figure slowly walked out. Under the shiny bald head was a rather handsome young man. Yi Tian, save me. The president shouted loudly, with excitement on his face. A feeling of surviving after a catastrophe arises in my heart. As president, he knows the latter as the man of S.H.I.E.L.D. More importantly, he clearly knows Yi Tian's powerful strength. On the contrary, it is an Inch. His scalp was numb, and he didn't know why, but he panicked unconsciously. The name of a person, the shadow of a tree. Everything Yi Tian did, one thing after another, was too terrifying. Did he even kill the extremely powerful Superman? The conference room fell into silence again. So what about Yi Tian? You may not be as powerful as in the legend. Get out of here, otherwise, I'll kill you directly. The missile on War Machine's shoulder aimed at Yi Tian. As long as there is a thought, it will be launched. A bit of ferocity flashed across the face of the Inch head in the battle armor. He has never fought against Yi Tian. Regarding the latter matter, it is only heard. And the story, once told, will inevitably have errors. The most important is, with Extremis in his body, he already has power beyond ordinary people. Plus the War Machine on his body gave him great confidence. Gold, Yi Tian said lightly. At the same time, the control of the 7 elements given by the system also began to play a role. The variant ability controlled by Lorna's magnetic force in the body also began to play out. Creak. War Machine's steps stopped suddenly. No matter how hard he struggled, he couldn't move the War Machine. What's going on? He suddenly raised his head, saw Yi Tian smiled indifferently, and waved his fingers lightly. Puff. The metal inside the armor suddenly started shapeshifting. 257, directly pierced his abdomen. The intense pain came, making him tremble uncontrollably. Fack. He roared angrily. There are many red lines appearing on the body surface. A liquid like magma flows in it. Terrible heat rises. Temperature is too high. Warning, the temperature is too high. Pissed. The line is completely ablaze. The entire battle armor began to melt rapidly. A war machine worth hundreds of millions. It was directly destroyed like that. Inside the Inch head, the whole body is red. Like a lava fire man. Terrible heat swept the meeting room. The surrounding plastic and files burst into flames. The president's hair began to curl under the heat. The scorching air wave made his face sting. He hid behind the conference table. Although he was still hot and sweating profusely, the tingling sensation on his skin was much reduced. Yi Tian, see, this is my strength. I will melt you into scum. Let everyone know that you are a piece of trash. Inch roared, sparks flying everywhere. Carrying enormous strength, he charged fiercely at Yi Tian, and with every step, the steel on the ground would melt slightly, leaving a shallow footprint. The huge crimson fist distorts the surrounding space. This punch is extremely terrifying. Before the fist arrived, the violent wind, wrapped in high temperature, set Yi Tian's clothes on fire. However, Yi Tian still looked indifferent. It seemed that this punch was not intended to hit him. Ha ha, you trash, are you frightened out of your wits? Shouted loudly. Boom, he punched Yi Tian heavily in the face. Ha ha ha, hit, I won. Yi Tian is dead, Yi Tian was defeated by me. Kun 2 yelled crazily. Behind the conference table, the president who was peeking went limp. Even if the scorching air billows in the conference room rolled over and scalded his skin, he felt an extreme coldness. From the limbs, converged to the body, and finally reached the brain. Make him dizzy for a while. Yi Tian lost, hit by the fist that contained terrifying heat. Even steel alloys are easily melted, let alone the flesh. No matter how powerful Yi Tian is. Faced with this situation, what use is there? However, at this time, a flat voice sounded. The two people in Jean's meeting room looked stiff. By the way, are you two happy too early? Yi Tian's voice sounded. When Kun Tu heard this, his scalp tingled. Look intently. Just in time to see Yi Tian's cold eyes. There is no extra emotion, only pure killing intent. And his fist that was enough to melt steel didn't hurt Yi Tian in the slightest. Intense fear grew from the bottom of his heart. It made him tremble unconsciously. This emotion never appeared again after he injected extremis. However, at this moment, not only did it appear, but it also appeared in the form of mountains and tsunamis. Submerge him directly in the hell of fear. Click. Before he could react from his fear, he was held by the neck with one hand. Strong and powerful fingers that cannot be shaken. Hoo, I have unparalleled resilience, you can't kill me. Kun Tu kept panting heavily and laughed. His fiery red skin made him look extremely hideous. Oh, Yi Tian didn't speak. Fire. Spit out one word. Burning Man's laughter stopped abruptly. His complexion became extremely ugly. The crimson body suddenly lit up. It seems that deep within the body, there is a more terrifying temperature. Boom. Inch's whole body is on fire. But this time, he let out a miserable scream. Less than a few breaths. The Inch will disappear completely. Not even a single ashes remained. The battle is settled. Yi Tian clapped his hands. At this time, after seeing safety, the president climbed out in a panic. Rumble. The plane shuddered and began to descend. The president couldn't stand, staggered and fell to the ground. Mr. Yi Tian, take me out of here. The plane is about to crash. Yi Tian nodded and raised the president with one hand. The other hand directly tore the cabin in front of it. The two just got off the plane. The plane burst into flames, and then exploded with a bang in the distance. Terrifying flames rose in the air. The air waves swept wildly around. The clothes on the president's body were blown and rattled. His body was trembling constantly, and he looked at the plane that exploded not far away with lingering fear. Almost died here. Thank you for saving me. The president narrowly escaped death. As a result, I looked down, only to find that it was at an altitude of thousands of miles. Hurriedly hugging Yi Tian's thigh. The corners of Yi Tian's mouth twitched. You are so messy. The president nodded quickly. Normally, who would dare to talk to him like that? However, in this situation, the situation is stronger than others, so they can only be obedient. Whoosh. Yi Tian wrapped the president with a windshield. Cut through the space directly, and in an instant, returned to the airport in New York. At this moment, many people have not dispersed. I saw Yi Tian appearing on the red carpet carrying the president with disheveled hair and ragged clothes. Everyone was stunned. President, that's the president. My God, it really is. Ollie Crab, the other person is Yi Tian. Everyone exclaimed. The president who had just left on a plane. He was in tatters all over, as embarrassed as a tramp. Carried by Yi Tian with one hand, he appeared at the airport again. Where did the plane go? Where did the rest of the following officials go? Also, why is there no movement from the war machine? At the same time, the airport also received a reminder that the plane exploded. Hiss. Everyone gasped. A terrifying thought emerged in everyone's mind. Yi Tian kidnapped the president, destroyed the plane and killed everyone. Even the superhero war machine was not spared. After a deathly silence, a general's scalp was numb, and he shouted in horror, "Protect the president." Hiss. Click, click, click. Hundreds of soldiers pointed their guns at Yi Tian, their expressions extremely tense. The general screamed, "Yi Tian, put down the president. Don't be impulsive." Some reporters who did not leave trembled constantly. They were not afraid, but excited. Planes crash, officials die, war machine disappears, and the president is kidnapped. These are big news every day. If they are added together, it will be a big news that is rarely seen in a century. Besides, this matter has something to do with Yi Tian. They were beyond excited. I even wanted to kneel on the ground and thank God for this great news. You know, in the current news, there is a traffic secret. It is Yi Tian. As long as Yi Tian is mentioned, the click rate and ratings will increase crazily. However, Yi Tian Shenlong sees the beginning but does not see the end. They don't have any material at all. Now, These explosive news are linked together, adding Yi Tian's name. As long as they can shoot it, and release it as soon as possible, it will definitely be an instant hit. Think here. The hand holding the camera was trembling. Yi Tian, let go of the president. The general spoke again. Hearing this, the president quickly said, misunderstanding, it was Yi Tian who saved me. However, after he finished speaking, no one put down their guns. Everyone believed that Yi Tian coerced the president into saying such things. At the same time, all these things were simultaneously uploaded to the internet by reporters. There is no editing, no splicing, and even the sound effects are not processed, often with a rustling sound. At this moment, a white-collar worker was fishing at work, and saw a live broadcast of a TV program on the software. The shaking camera made him want to swipe away. But that title attracted him deeply. Yi Tian kidnapped the president. Is it the distortion of human nature or the loss of morality? Hiss. His eyes lit up, and a thirst for knowledge arose deep in his heart. However, the click-through rate reached a terrifying level in an instant. Yi Tian kidnapped the president, which caused an uproar on the entire internet. Yi Tian kidnapped the president, which caused an uproar on the entire internet. A student is looking at his phone in class. Suddenly, his body stiffened. Stand up with a bang. The movement was so loud that even the chairs were kicked away. How is it possible? She was shocked. The face of the teacher in the classroom changed twice. Angrily shouted, Peter Parker, what are you doing? You are in class now. The man is Peter Parker, and he has a lesser-known identity. Spider-Man, a popular and well-known neighbor superhero. Recently he has been very distressed. Because besides Iron Man, he has another idol. Yi Tian. This made him blame himself very much, and lamented his flirtatiousness. Mr. Zanetti, Peter Parker panicked. Professor Zanetti said gloomily, why are you yelling during class time? Peter Parker looked down. The surrounding students roared with laughter. You coward. My God, it's almost like a woman. Peter Parker's cheeks flushed. With an introverted personality, he has always been bullied in school. Even after obtaining super abilities, this hasn't changed at all. He didn't always have the super ability to take revenge like everyone else. Instead, it was the same as usual. It is said on the internet that Yi Tian kidnapped the president. Peter Parker said. As soon as these words came out, the entire classroom fell into a deathly silence. Fart. Peter, are you itchy? What nonsense. Yi Tian is a good man, how could he kidnap the president? Many students scolded one after another. They are basically 16 or 17 years old. The rise of Yi Tian is like a legend. Considered idols by them. Zanetti's face was as gloomy as water. Peter Parker, it looks like I need to talk to your parents. The one he hates the most is Peter Parker. My family is very poor, and I don't know how to give gifts on weekdays. Ori Crab. It's real. Look, several TV programs are live broadcast. Several students exclaimed. They held up their phones and shouted at the top of their lungs. Before teacher Zanetti could speak, he heard a shocking exclamation from the classroom next to him. Meanwhile, is the whole school, the whole city, the entire lighthouse country. The live broadcast of several reporters caused an explosive sensation. Shield. Fury was in a good mood. Cleared out a lot of Hydra spies. The entire shield ushered in unprecedented clarity. Hill, we still have the last floating aircraft carrier, and I'm going to hand it over to you. Fury said. This is a very critical task with heavy responsibilities greater than. Similarly, it also represents many rights. Some people in the military and political circles have played out their brains in order to get in. Hill was just about to answer. Seeing Fury turn on the phone, his complexion suddenly changed. Hill asked suspiciously, what's the matter? Director. The smile on Fury's face disappeared, and the good mood in his heart disappeared. Yi Tian kidnapped the president. Hill gasped. His face was full of disbelief. How can it be? Fury didn't speak, just slid his finger, and a screen appeared in midair. Inside is the screen of the live broadcast. Inside, Yi Tian stood next to the bewildered president. Hundreds of soldiers stood ready, pointing their guns at Yi Tian. In the distance, you can also see tanks carrying smoke and dust like giant steel beasts. Dozens of cars are connected together. and in the sky, accompanied by bursts of roaring sounds. Several fighter planes pulled their long tails of smoke and dust. Suspended in the sky, the missiles below can be launched at any time. All of a sudden, Yi Tian, who was sought after by everyone, turned out to be the biggest villain. And met with hostility from the government. Contact Phil Coulson, contact Tony Stark. Ask what happened, Fury said solemnly. He knew that Yi Tian and Phil Coulson carried out the task together. And Tony, may be the last person to see Yi Tian. Only these two people know why this situation is happening now. Director, do you believe that Yi Tian will kidnap the president? Hill asked worriedly. His fingers clenched unconsciously. As for Yi Tian, she likes it. Otherwise, the Hydra incident would not be obsessed with Yi Tian when he was dying. Fury shook his head. This can only be known after the investigation of the matter is clear. Hill was silent for a while when he heard this. Soon, calls from Phil Coulson and Tony came through. After a brief conversation, Fury understood what happened. Killian used Mandarin's identity and stole the war machine to kill the president. Yi Tian is there to save people. Fury let out a long sigh of relief. He was also worried that Yi Tian had kidnapped the president. After all, he knew the latter's character. As long as someone makes a huge mistake, even if he is misunderstood by the whole world, Yi Tian will follow suit. Such a person is the most trustworthy, but also the scariest. However, it's okay now. Let's contact the airport as soon as possible to clarify this misunderstanding. Hill said hastily. Fury nodded. And in Suicide Squad headquarters, Amanda paced back and forth. His brows were furrowed. How did Yi Tian kidnap the president? Colonel Fredge replied. Who knows, I can't see through his character. Amanda was silent for a while, and said directly, there must be a misunderstanding, prepare for the plane, I'm going to the airport. Fredge was startled. As Amanda's confidant, he is very clear about how cautious the leader in front of him is. There are countless people in the entire lighthouse country. Want to kill this hiding in the dark. A woman who performs all kinds of dirty tricks for the lighthouse country. However, no one ever succeeded. Many more people have never even seen her true face. Now Amanda is willing to do it for Yi Tian, because of the airport. There are many reporters there. Once someone discovers their identity, you will face endless assassinations. Amanda has a serious expression. I definitely know these things, and now the situation is urgent, I have to go. Regardless of whether Yi Tian really kidnapped the president, as long as he is not killed immediately, there is still a chance for negotiation. This negotiation must never be handed over to those congressmen. They are idiots who only know how to seek their own interests. And the military, whether it's hawks or doves, hates Yi Tian to the bone. You have also seen Yi Tian's strength. Kryptonite is useless to him. So far, no weakness has been found. Fredge couldn't help but gasp. Now he also reacted. Yi Tian's character is not the kind of person who will give in at will. The set of political tactics of the MPs is of no use to Yi Tian. The military, on the other hand, can't wait for Yi Tian to make a big mistake. At that time, Yi Tian can be overwhelmed by public opinion. But no matter what kind of means, it will completely push Yi Tian to the opposite of the lighthouse country. S.H.I.E.L.D. should take care of these things. Fredge said again. Amanda shook her head. Fury's identity is more important than mine, although it is opposite, but he can't have any accidents. Fredge looked at the leader in front of him in surprise. After spending several years together, he discovered that himself had never seen through Amanda. Amanda chuckled. Is it in your hearts that I am a person who is particularly afraid of death and will do anything to achieve my goals? Why? Fredge nodded. Basically everyone around me thinks so. Yes, I admit it. Amanda said indifferently. Fredge opened his mouth. Then why don't you come forward and let Fury deal with it by himself? Their department is somewhat similar to S.H.I.E.L.D. But the rights are much smaller. And dealing with things is also the darkest, grayest part. For S.H.I.E.L.D., their impression has never been very good. Amanda was silent for a moment, then said slowly, Fury's identity is more important than you imagined, even more important than the president. Hearing this, Fredge couldn't help but gasp, his scalp tingling. He didn't dare to ask again. For some reason, he had a feeling that he had come into contact with the deepest secret of the Lighthouse Kingdom. If you continue to ask, all the life in front of you will undergo earth-shaking changes. His peaceful life will also disappear completely. Fury has never guarded the lighthouse country, but human beings, Amanda said. It seems that over time, a lot of people forget about that. She came to the rooftop first, walked towards the parked plane in the center. Fred was just about to follow. Amanda's voice was heard. Don't follow me, I have already opened all the permissions for you, if I don't come back, you are in the file area. Afterwards, the plane roared, spewed out air waves, and flew towards the distance. Fred stood on the rooftop. Even though the sun was shining on his body, he still felt the chill all over his body. Amanda's last words were almost like last words. As long as her face is photographed, it's almost a doomsday ending. In the apartment building, Harley Quinn is watching TV. Bored, she can only pass the time by TV. It's like going back to when I was a psychiatrist. Life is ordinary and ordinary. Maybe it's been in Gotham City for a long time. This boring life actually made her a little uncomfortable. It's so boring, so boring. Harley Quinn was holding a lollipop, her big white legs turned up high. Doctor Strange is practicing magic. And Wanda went out to buy groceries. I can't tell that such a strong woman likes to be a housewife and pursue an ordinary life. The ordinary and boring ordinary life. Harley Quinn shuddered just thinking about it. This one doesn't look good, and this one doesn't look good either. Harley Quinn kept switching the TV channels. Suddenly, her beautiful eyes widened, and the corners of her mouth twitched as she looked at the TV screen. Yi Tian kidnapped the president. The delicate voice is loud. Reverberates throughout the house. Doctor Strange rushed out. His face was full of disbelief. He rubbed his ears, as if he thought he had heard wrong. What did you say? What happened to Yi Tian? Watching TV, Harley Quinn said. Doctor Strange's eyelids twitched wildly when he saw the TV. Ollie Crab. Yi Tian kidnapped the president. Doctor Strange, who had always been calm, immediately jumped up. His scalp was numb, and his eyes were filled with horror. All voices trembled. Yes, yes, the president was kidnapped. Harley Quinn nodded excitedly, flicking her ponytails. Doctor Strange, is there something wrong with your focus? Why are you so excited about kidnapping the president? Go to the airport, Dr. Severe Hand, open a portal. Harley Quinn exited, her beautiful eyes shining brightly, sparkling with excitement. Broken Hand Doctor, what a vicious woman. Doctor Strange's mouth twitched. But it was too late to correct. The top priority now is to dissuade Yi Tian. The space oscillated, sparks splashed, and a portal appeared in front of him. The current Doctor Strange has learned a lot of magic and is already a serious teacher. Don't look at Harley Quinn, who is crazy on weekdays. I didn't expect to encounter big right and wrong. Still very anxious. Doctor Strange sighed in his heart. Wait for me. Harley Quinn pulled out a baseball bat. Doctor Strange froze for a moment. What are you doing with the stick? Harley Quinn blinked her beautiful eyes, with a crazy smile on her delicate face. Fight. Doctor Strange has black lines all over his head. Decided to take back what I just said. And prepared to close the portal. Harley Quinn really went to the airport because she was afraid that things wouldn't go wrong. Couldn't fight at first, but Harley Quinn went up and slammed it down. Both sides can play out their dog brains. However, it was too late. Harley Quinn has entered the portal. Doctor Strange hurriedly followed. Airport. Sha Feng blows hot and dry wind. Hundreds of soldiers were sweating profusely, dripping into their eyes, making them extremely uncomfortable. But they didn't even have the guts to wipe it. Because, opposite is Yi Tian. In a short period of time, it is like a legendary existence. Wu Nang defeated Hulk and killed Superman. Wen Nang even stopped at the entrance of the White House. With 2 poems, the military who scolded him could not look up. At this moment, a portal suddenly appeared at the airport. Crash. Half the soldiers turned their guns on. Look tense. Yi Tian, I'm coming. A delicate voice sounded. Everyone was stunned. What came out was not a malevolent helper. Instead, she is a beautiful girl. Exquisite facial features, snow-white skin. What was exposed to the air was the slender waist with a full grip. Especially those round and big white legs, between the moves. These soldiers were so bloody that they kept swallowing their saliva. Harley Quinn didn't mind the gazes around her at all, and came in front of Yi Tian generously. Hugging Yi Tian's arm, he kissed Yi Tian. At this moment, the sharp eyes of a sniper suddenly lit up. In his line of sight, Yi Tian's attention was distracted, which was an excellent opportunity to shoot. Finger on the trigger. This is a specially modified sniper rifle. Possesses great distance and penetration. Even a 1-meter thick steel plate can easily penetrate through it. Just a little effort. The specially made adamantium bullets will tear everything apart and kill the target. He constantly adjusted his breathing, feeling unprecedented tension in his heart. Can this shot can kill Yi Tian? The sniper was taken aback by the thought that came to his mind. You know, as a 1 in a million sniper, when shooting, you must be focused. Only in this way can we guarantee our state and ensure that we can hit the enemy with one blow. However, with his finger on the trigger, he delayed firing. Because the opposite is Yi Tian. That powerful and suffocating existence. If his shot didn't kill Yi Tian, it will only irritate the other party. At that time, once Yi Tian goes mad, everyone will die. He cannot afford this responsibility. Gudong. The sniper's throat rolled, and he swallowed hard. Without a doubt, he had the biggest problem of his life. Fact, there are fighter planes and tanks on the ground. Wait. The sniper wiped the sweat off his face. At the same time, in tanks, in fighter cabs. It's the same idea. There are fighter planes and snipers, including hundreds of soldiers. Wait. And tanks and snipers, including hundreds of soldiers. Wait, again. Don't blame them for hesitation at this time. It's because the person opposite is Yi Tian. A terrifying existence that tore apart Superman. Just when their hesitation was undecided, a person came out of the portal again. It is Dr. Strange. After he came out, he found that there was a terrifying and murderous atmosphere around him. That breath was so suppressed that he could hardly breathe. His pupils contracted suddenly, and he looked at the hundreds of soldiers around him with trepidation, and dozens of tanks waiting in battle in the distance. After sweeping the fighter planes in the sky, the last eyes fell on the bewildered president. Yi Tian, what's going on? Dr. Strange bit the bullet and walked over quickly. Asked anxiously. I saved the president, they misunderstood. Yi Tian said helplessly. Dr. Strange breathed a sigh of relief. So it was not Yi Tian who kidnapped the president. Reporter, headline party. I almost paralyzed with fear. What? It's boring. Harley Quinn pouted, a look of disappointment flashing across her beautiful face. Immediately, her eyeballs rolled around. He glanced at the president insignificantly. With a movement of the baseball bat in his hand, he drew an arc and fell towards the president's head. Dr. Strange's scalp was numb, and he quickly summoned a golden rune barrier to block the attack. He gasped heavily. At this moment, panic rose in my heart. Fortunately, I have been watching this crazy woman carefully, otherwise the stick would fall. It really broke the sky. Harley Quinn said dissatisfiedly. What are you doing to stop me? Why do you say I stopped you? You have the nerve to ask. The fight between the two was very fast. When everyone realized it, the attack had been blocked. What are you three doing? Let the president go. Do you know what you're doing? The general shouted loudly. In my heart, I was extremely flustered. At the same time, there was a huge storm on the internet. At this moment, the number of people surfing the internet has reached the peak ever. Servers are stuck. That woman is somewhat familiar. When you say it, it's really a bit like Harley Quinn. Yes, it's really Harley Quinn. How does Yi Tian get together with her super criminal, super lunatic? Could it be Yi Tian really kidnapped the president, but why? On the internet, people discuss with each other. Many people recognize Harley Quinn. In addition, just now, the King's winner clearly shot Harley Quinn swinging a baseball bat at the president. Many people gradually believed that Yi Tian really framed the president. Even if you don't want to admit it, all the clues are there, too. Fuck, why did Yi Tian become a criminal? How annoying. He is a superhero, how can he be depraved? Upstairs, has your wife been raped? Can she speak? For the sake of hundreds of people, Yi Tian made an enemy of the entire high level of the lighthouse country, blocked the gate of the White House and scolded the military. Have you forgotten? This time, it must be the president's fault, otherwise Yi Tian wouldn't have kidnapped him. Quote. Then why is he with the criminal Harley Quinn? You explain, admit it. Hee. According to reliable news, Harley Quinn has turned from evil to righteousness. As you all know, in Midway City, it was saved by Etienne and Harley Quinn. Occasionally Crab. Is it real or not? But isn't Harley Quinn a couple with Joker? Why are you with Etienne? Hee. Compared to Etienne, Joker is nothing. And in Gotham City, a dark basement, Joker looked at the comments frantically. The expression is momentarily painful and momentarily excited. Etienne, I'm going to kill you, I've already found your weakness. Soon, you will die. As for Harley, as a betrayer, you will die even worse. In the airport, Etienne couldn't help but rubbed between his eyebrows. He turned to look at the president. Otherwise, please explain. The president had a bitter face. I explained, but they didn't listen. At this time, in the distance of the sky, a crimson figure flew over. Just a whoosh, the red figure landed beside Etienne. The beautiful face is no less than Harley Quinn. Especially in her left hand, she is holding a vegetable basket. There are fresh vegetables and meat in it. It was Harley Quinn. Just now in the supermarket, I heard their discussion that you kidnapped the president. Wanda opened her mouth, and the whole body was filled with red origin magic power. Let's go straight out, Wanda said, with a strong murderous look in her words. At this moment, she transformed from a docile housewife into a murderous god. Doctor Strange felt pain in his head. The women beside Etienne were getting more and more fierce. Harley Quinn nearly beat the president to death with a club just now. Wanda is even more powerful, and she is going to kill it directly. Thinking about living with these two people, he couldn't help but feel scared. It looks like it's time to rent a house by myself. The general became more and more nervous when he saw that there were more and more people around Etienne. Give you one more minute, let go of the president, or we'll shoot you. Wait, who said to shoot? At this moment, a plane landed in the sky. Hill ran over and showed the ID in his hand. Etienne is the hero who saved the president, you still haven't put down your guns. In addition to the identity of S.H.I.E.L.D., Hill also has a box. A high-level official of the government. Many soldiers looked at each other and saw the doubts in each other's eyes. What's going on? At the same time, a group of whips in a villa in New York. Tony rode the armor and came to the vice president's house. The house is full of warm decorations. There were also many people drinking, and it was very lively. Okay, the birthday party is over, tell me where is the vice president? Tony spoke. Iron Man, it's Iron Man. Mom, look, my idol. Can I have an autograph? Several children jumped up excitedly and surrounded them one after another. Okay kids, I'll talk about the signing later, and now I'm going to arrest someone. The rest of the children reluctantly let go. I repeat, where is the vice president? The adults around you look at me and I look at you. But no one spoke. I'll say it one last time, where is the vice president? Tony demanded loudly. At the same time, the armor raised its hand and fired an energy bomb at the big tree in the distance. The 1-meter-thick tree collapsed in an instant. Rumble. After a sound of scalp numbness, it slammed heavily on the open space. Broken branches, with green leaves hanging in 2s and 3s, bounced everywhere. Gudong. Everyone swallowed a mouthful of saliva. We didn't see him. Since just now, he has left. Tony frowned, and asked again, where's his family? People around you look at me, I look at you, suddenly feel a burst of horror. At some point, the vice president's family disappeared. This discovery, coupled with the aggressive arrival of Iron Man, made them aware of a hint of crisis. Tony saw pictures of little girls hanging on the wall. Wearing a beaming red dress, holding a cake in hand. A very delicate and perfect girl, the only shortcoming is that she has a broken leg. Empty and full of dissonance. At this time, Rhodes ran over. We're late, the vice president may have got the news. Tony said in a deep voice. Rhodes quickly raised the phone and said eagerly, look at this. On the screen of the mobile phone, it was the army that surrounded Etienne. And the vice president, with a large group of congressmen, scolded Etienne angrily. Tony's expression changed. A wave of panic spread in Tony's heart. How did the vice president get the news in advance and know that his affairs had been brought to light? And arrange for the evacuation of the home. JARVIS, use all the energy, how long will it take to reach the airport? Mr. Stark, 5 minutes away. Tony's scalp tingled. The warframe takes 5 minutes to arrive. Ordinary planes take at least 10 minutes away. In other words, the vice president rushed towards the airport 10 minutes ago. At that time, there was no news on the internet that ETN had kidnapped the president. These things, who told the vice president? There are his accomplices in the government. But isn't the vice president afraid of death? When ETN knew that he was Killian's backstage, it had already appeared. Are you not afraid that ETN will kill him directly? No, I forgot something. Cold sweat broke out on Tony's forehead. Feel a big conspiracy. He gritted his teeth and left the battle armor. Road, hurry to the airport. If you are late, it will be too late. This is the case now. All are dead, and the president's words, which are believed by all, were spoken under ETN's coercion. At this moment the vice president appeared at the airport. In this case, things became more and more unfavorable for ETN. Once ETN made a move, the accusation would be firmly on ETN's head. A hero admired by thousands of people has turned into a criminal that everyone despises. AEF, this kind of gap will make many people give up on themselves. At that time, ETN will be notorious and become the target of arrest by the Lighthouse State. And want to break the game, only Rhodes. It's not how powerful he is, but because he is the owner of War Machine. Also someone who can explain the whole ins and outs. Who the hell is able to lay out such a complicated scheme in such a short period of time, using the found abandoned son of the vice president to point all the fingers at ETN at the last moment? Tony is as big as two people. Fark, I'm going to go back and study the Sherlock Holmes collection carefully. I like Wan Fu. At this moment, under the control of Rhodes, the armor quickly lifted into the air, with the help of the intelligent JARVIS. Even others can easily operate the armor. Airport. The vice president came over with several congressmen and generals. ETN, do you know that killing MPs and diplomats is a heinous crime? Abducting the president now. What is your relationship with Mandarin? Tell me. I now suspect that you are an undercover agent sent by the Orientals. The vice president's words linked ETN with the terrorist Mandarin. And in the words, the crime of ETN was confirmed. This time, everyone was shocked. People on the internet believe in ETN. However, the facts before him pushed ETN to the forefront. No, I believe ETN. The president said just now that ETN saved him, and the others didn't have a chance for ETN to speak. Me too. ETN is a good man, his eyes can't deceive anyone. Some people still support ETN. However, many people gradually kept silent. They don't know how to evaluate these things. I don't know whether to trust ETN or the vice president. However, another voice suddenly appeared on the internet. Haha, I laughed so hard, you ETN licking dogs, you still don't believe the facts in front of you. I've said long ago that ETN is a hypocrite. Not to mention, look at his skin color, he is of yellow race. The vice president is right, ETN is a criminal. Many abusive voices suddenly appeared on the internet. As keyboard warriors, they are not worried about receiving any sanctions. And he can insult ETN, a superhero who is in the limelight, a popular idol. Let them have spiritual pleasure. It was so cool that I almost had an intracranial orgasm. However, following their words, they were quickly attacked by many people. You, what the hell are you? I'm a yellow race. I attacked your country 1,000 years ago. Maybe I killed your ancestors. Fake, are you brains eating shit? If ETN is really a criminal, what can a few hundred soldiers and dozens of tanks do in this area? Exactly, ETN is the one who can defeat Superman. If it is what you said, he is a criminal who commits all kinds of crimes. If it were me, I would have slapped him long ago, and it is the vice president's turn to beep. But at this moment, a scene that shocked everyone appeared. ETN, what the hell are you trying to do? The vice president continued to curse. You lowly yellow man, you are really an unfamiliar white-eyed wolf. Let go of our president and go back to your country. A sound of unbearable insults made everyone frown. Especially racial discrimination may cause the lighthouse country to suffer a lot of criticism. You want me to kill you? ETN said suddenly. You yellow-skinned pig, even if you kill me, I will not be afraid of you. I will always be the vice president of the lighthouse country. The vice president cursed hoarsely. He seems to have become a patriotic angry youth, because of Yi Tian's kidnapping of the president, and his emotions go wild. Since you are looking for death, I will fulfill you. Yi Tian's eyes suddenly turned cold. Insulting his own skin color, insulting the country he lived in his previous life. Must die. Yi Tian's words set off a terrifying wave in the hearts of all the soldiers. The seriousness on his face was replaced by shock and horror. Yi Tian actually wants to kill the president. Beside the president, the faces of several members of Congress also quickly turned ugly. How bold, how bold. In front of so many people, especially when being filmed by a camera. Yi Tian didn't feel the slightest bit of fear. Isn't he afraid of the insults of the people of the whole country? Aren't you afraid of being wanted by the lighthouse country? Yi Tian, think about what you are doing. You are too crazy. Kidnap the president and kill the vice president. Several congressmen blew their beards angrily and stared. Powerful beings, he's seen before, like Superman, Magneto. Each one is a super powerful existence. What is the result? It's not like living in the lighthouse country honestly and being restricted by their political means. In their view, in this world, the most powerful thing is not strength, but human heart. As long as you can use people's hearts, you are considered to have great strength. It can only be controlled by them. For their use. But Yi Tian seemed like a different kind. Rebellious and unruly. But so what? They have the confidence to turn the mighty tiger in front of them into a docile cat. Hill's pretty face changed, and he took Yi Tian's hand. You can't kill him. Once you do it, you can't turn back. Kill the vice president in front of everyone, no matter what mistakes the vice president made. The top leaders of the Beacon country will regard Yi Tian as an enemy. Because, as interest groups, they are firmly bound together. Once Yi Tian really killed the vice president, at that time, it will be for the face of the entire government. They will also fight Yi Tian to death. Yi Tian definitely knows. But as long as he didn't do anything, the vice president scolded him harder and harder. Hill, you're hanging out with a monk. I think you are incompetent. The lack of men is like this. The vice president was spitting stars, without any grace. Just like a woman cursing at the vegetable market. Constantly swearing with nasty words. Hill was expressionless, as if he wasn't the one being scolded. It seems that he has never heard the vice president's obscene words. But Yi Tian, who was holding her arm, could clearly feel it. Hill's jade fingers became more and more forceful, and his nails pierced fiercely into his clothes. Yi Tian moved his arm, but he didn't pull it away. Lowering his head, Hill's beautiful eyes were pleading. This capable and resolute woman was full of worries and fears. Seeing this, Yi Tian sighed, and the killing intent in his eyes slightly faded. Hee, what a coward. I dare not do anything. Hill, you poor woman, your vision is getting worse and worse. My family Labrador is just right for an idiot like you. Hill's obstruction made the vice president even more excited. Grinning, he laughed viciously. He knows he has been exposed. Rather than spend the rest of your life in prison, even hurt the family, it's better to just drag Yi Tian into the water. Only the latter dared to do it. The situation is the same. Boom. The killing intent that Yi Tian suppressed just now surged again. With a jerk of the arm, it shook Hill's arm away. Looking at the latter's beautiful eyes flushed from humiliation, Shen Sheng said, "Do you still want to endure?" Hill stiffened. The straight and delicate body looks a bit bleak. Being insulted like this in front of the live broadcast of several TV stations. She can't take it. If she was alone, she would have killed the vice president without any hesitation. However, she couldn't let Yi Tian make a move. This is a trap, specifically aimed at Yi Tian's trap. Hill believes that only Yi Tian will act, and there will be a series of means waiting for him. Sorry, I can't bear it. Yi Tian suddenly raised his head, staring coldly at the vice president who was laughing wildly. Aware of Yi Tian's actions, Hill had an anxious look on his face. However, the voice has not yet yelled out. I heard a sonic boom coming from around me. Sao Nima's dog, did you grow up eating shit? Your mouth is so stinky. When the sonic boom sounded, Yi Tian's cold voice also sounded. In a wide airport, there is almost nothing that can be used as an obstacle. Yi Tian came to the vice president's side almost instantly. Click, there was the sound of bones breaking. This was followed by the vice president's hog-killing howls. The arms of this pot-bellied man have been broken. Bright red blood dripped down the ground from the wound. The broken forest white arm bone at the wound was quickly stained red with blood. Ah! After a pause for a few seconds, the vice president's nervous system reacted. Severe pain came from the wound, causing his face to contort. Doda's cold sweat continued to drip down, quickly wetting his clothes. Shut up! Yi Tian snorted coldly. Big hand waved out. Snapped. A crisp sound sounded. The vice president spat out a few teeth, and half of his face was red and swollen. This is why Yi Tian deliberately withdrew his strength. Otherwise, this slap can directly slap the vice president to death. Yi Tian, if you have the ability, you kill me. The vice president's eyes flashed with ferocity. He grinned grimly. The physical pain did not affect his spiritual joy. Yi Tian lost. At the moment of action, he was completely defeated. And it has been revealed that I colluded with Killian and cultivated terrorists. All of this was caused by Yi Tian. Anyway, the rest of his life will be spent in prison. It's better to use my own life to die with the person in front of me who sabotaged my plan. Snapped, snapped, snapped. Yi Tian had an indifferent sneer on his face. The palm is pulled out again and again. The vice president's face was as swollen as a pig's head. Wisps of blood mixed with the snot and saliva. Runs from the nose and mouth. Wow, you are pussy. The vice president opened his mouth and spoke indistinctly. However, these simple actions pulled the wound on his face. I twitched in pain, and this change took place almost instantly. After a short period of astonishment, the soldier held the gun in his hand in horror. Yi Tian started. It directly broke the vice president's arms. The eyes of the two congressmen and the general were split. Endless anger welled up from the bottom of my heart. Slap the vice president in the face like you would slap your grandson in front of everyone. This is equivalent to smacking the face of the lighthouse country. Yi Tian is openly challenging the authority of the lighthouse country. As the overlord of the world, it has been hundreds of years, and has not suffered such a great humiliation. Yi Tian, you are dead. You're on a road of no return. From now on, you will be the enemy of the whole world. Not only them. On the entire network, all the people watching the live broadcast fell into deathly silence. The barrage that almost occupied the entire screen, at this moment, unexpectedly appeared terror. They stared wide-eyed, watching this scene in disbelief. Although my heart is also very cool. But the heart is more shocked and terrified. You know, this person who was beaten into a pig's head is not an ordinary person. It's the vice president. A minute ago, he was wantonly insulting Yi Tian and Hill. Aloof. However, this kind of person who was once unattainable and determined the direction of the country. At this moment, he is like a distressed dog. A small life was held in Yi Tian's hands. This almost two-fold contrast. Let everyone have a dreamy feeling. However, no matter how unbelievable they were, the facts before them told them ruthlessly that this matter was true. After a long period of shock, everyone also realized one thing. That's the end of Yi Tian. This is not an assassination, or a threat. Neither side has challenged publicly. Leave a layer of buffer room for each other. That's why Tony hit back at Mandarin in front of the entire media. On the second day, it suffered a devastating attack from 3 helicopters. And Yi Tian is even crazier. In front of everyone, beat the vice president into a pig's head. This is a natural contempt for the lighthouse country. No one will do it, and no one dares to do it. Yi Tian has no way out. He has completely offended the government. Yi Tian is so powerful. What can this group of government people do? Really think they can kill Yi Tian? Upstairs, are you insane? After this incident, Yi Tian will be completely discredited, and his name will be reviled by everyone. Could it be that he can kill everyone? Yeah, people live in groups. When the time comes, the whole society will crowd out Yi Tian, and he will gradually go crazy. It's obvious that the vice president is mean, and I want to slap him. Yi Tian should have killed him. Upstairs, it looks like a minor. In this world, there is no distinction between right and wrong, black and white. After the exaggeration of those politicians, the black has become white, and the righteous has become evil. Yi Tian is just one person, but they have a whole team. Do you trust Yi Tian? How long do you trust? A day, a month, a year? Can you guarantee that your point of view will not change with the passage of time? The vice president was carried by Etienne in one hand. Blood mixed with cold sweat dripped to the ground. Little fool, you are finished, don't worry, I will wait for you in hell. Vice President Sen curled up like a dead dog. However, those eyes were full of evil thunder and joy. At this time, many soldiers also quickly approached, looking at the miserable vice president on the ground. The astonishment on their faces turned into horror in an instant. Yi Tian started. Whatever the reason, they were going to shoot. What are you trying to do? Hill scolded anxiously. However, let her beautiful eyes open angrily. The soldiers remained unmoved. Lock the muzzle on Yi Tian. And the tank vehicle in the distance also turned the dark barrel and pointed it in the direction of Yi Tian. Stop all of them. The mechanical voice sounded. Boom. A streak of light streaked across the sky. I haven't waited for everyone to see clearly. A battle armor fell to the ground. Streamlined body, red and yellow texture. There is also the shape full of technology, which makes everyone envious. Iron Man, why is he here? 017, my god, another superhero. Several reporters trembled with excitement. Of all people, they are the happiest. What happened today is more explosive than the last. Anyway, after today, their worth will soar 1,000 times. They will also become the mainstay of each platform. He even got rid of the identity of a reporter and became a host who lived off the screen. Thinking of this, their faces flushed with excitement. The two congressmen and soldiers breathed a sigh of relief. Iron Man is a superhero. Yi Tian kidnapped the president and severely injured the vice president. Iron Man will certainly not sit idly by. Superhero, regiment against superhero. They are just ordinary people. Click. Armor opened. Contrary to everyone's expectations, the person who came out was not Tony Stark. It was a skinny black man. Everyone watching the live broadcast was stunned. What's the situation? Where's handsome Tony Stark? Who is this black boy? How ugly. My pants are all off, you show me this. My mother's automatics are all ready, just waiting for Tony to come out, and in the end, come out a BL*CKM*N. Crab occasionally, there are more and more people, big shots one after another. It's so exciting, can you see it without paying? I went to the toilet just now, what's going on now? However, it is different from the doubts of ordinary people. This group of soldiers and government counselors showed excited expressions. Colonel Rhodes is back. Compared to their excitement, the vice president's face became extremely ugly. He never thought that Rhodes would come so fast. However, Yi Tian has already started. Such a powerful existence that is not controlled by the government will be regarded as an enemy by all those in power in the government. Even if you can't discredit the sky in front of ordinary people. It doesn't matter anymore, it's just that it's a pity. However, everyone was attracted by the appearance of Rhodes. I didn't notice that the moment Rhodes appeared, the president's face became extremely gloomy. But that look was fleeting. As if it never appeared. The vice president joins forces with terrorists to kidnap the president. Yi Tian is the hero who saves the president. Rhodes said loudly. As soon as these words came out, everyone at the airport was taken aback, after a long period of astonishment. They all gasped. What's the situation? Things turned upside down. Yi Tian is the hero who saved the president. And the vice president is the murderer who colluded with terrorists and kidnapped the president. The two counselors looked at each other and realized that something was wrong. Then he whispered a few words to the soldiers behind him. Two soldiers came out and quickly came to several reporters. Then they snatched their cameras and threw them heavily on the ground. Several reporters resisted the pressure angrily. Shout out for human rights and freedom. However, when the guns were aimed at them, he was more honest than anyone else. Then they were kicked out. At this moment, all the people watching the live broadcast found that the screen was pitch black. There is no content inside. After waiting patiently for a while, found that the live broadcast has been closed. They changed a few crew cuts, all the same. Fake, it's the critical time, why is it suddenly not live broadcasting? What are these reporters doing? They're lost at critical moments. Occasionally crab, I still want to watch. The black man just finished talking about the vice president uniting with terrorists to kidnap the president. Yi Tian is a hero. All the live broadcast rooms were closed at the same time, there must be a conspiracy. Think with your ass. We all know there is a conspiracy, but we have at least one thing. Let's talk about it in detail downstairs. Yitian is a good man and has always been a good man. Although many people were dissatisfied, they were happy after hearing this. At least, the man they trusted did not live up to their expectations. In the airport, seeing that the camera was destroyed, the two congressmen breathed a sigh of relief. They realized what Rhodes said behind them. It is enough to shake people's confidence in the government. These things are absolutely confidential and must not be known to anyone. Mandarin is just a puppet launched by Killian, and the supporter behind the two of them is the vice president. My war machine was taken away. Killian wanted to kidnap the president. It was Yitian who came to rescue the president at the last moment. Tony can also testify to this matter. These words, like a heavy hammer, hit everyone's hearts. What? The Mandarin, who commits all kinds of crimes and carries out terrorist destruction everywhere, turned out to be the vice president behind the scenes. At this time, this group of soldiers had completely believed what Rhodes said. Rhodes is a person who is absolutely loyal to the country. Whether in the eyes of the military or the eyes of the political circles. It's almost a consensus. Hooray! Everyone is pointing their guns at the vice president. The chests of the two counselors heaved constantly. Looking at the vice president, his eyes were full of coldness. At the same time, they also felt a sense of gratitude. Fortunately, the reporters were driven away in advance. Otherwise, let the masses know the dignified vice president and support terrorists like Mandarin. The entire lighthouse country will be turned upside down. Do you have anything else to say? Rhodes came over, although the appearance of the vice president startled him. However, he didn't show it. The vice president didn't go to see Rhodes. Instead, he looked at Yitian jokingly. Unfortunately, you can't kill me now. He then burst out laughing. At this time, Amanda also came from a distance. As soon as she got off the plane, she rushed over. The conversation just now stopped in my ears. However, she, who has performed too many dirty things, is not too surprised. Not only the vice president, but the rest of the congressmen probably also have their own ways of making money. It's just that, in the absence of investigation, they are all serious and good people. Once that fig leaf is uncovered, it's full of disgusting rotting maggots. However, as long as Yitian has not killed the vice president, Riki will have time. The moment the two congressmen saw Amanda, they were slightly surprised. How did this existence that has been hiding in the dark come out? However, just when everyone thought it was over, a crack, sound of neck breaking sounded. Everyone suddenly turned their eyes to Yitian. I saw the vice president in his hand. The head presents a terrifying angle and is tilted aside. The vice president is dead. Everyone gasped. At this point, things have settled down. Not surprisingly, the vice president will also spend his life in prison. But Yitian still hurt the killer. Yitian, what are you thinking? Amanda showed a flustered expression for the first time. The vice president died and was strangled to death by Yitian just like that. I know you want to avenge those killed by terrorists, but the law must punish you. Do you understand? If you do this, the peaceful life in the future will completely eliminate the medical treatment. Yitian shrugged his shoulders. He scolded me, and also scolded Hill. He deserves to be killed. As soon as these words came out, everyone stopped breathing. He stared wide-eyed at Hill, who was also stunned. Oh shit, you are chasing women, wanting to move women, how about another way? He is the vice president. After cursing a few words, he was killed immediately. And unlike all of them, Harley Quinn, the upturned part of the chest kept shaking. Let everyone's eyes be hot. Yitian, I love you the most. Harley Quinn didn't care about the eyes of others. Hugging Yitian was like a mess. Crazy, really crazy. As expected, I was not mistaken. Yitian is crazier than Joker. As expected of the man I like. No, I can't hold it anymore. My body has reacted. Harley Quinn stuck out her tongue and licked her hot red lips. Harley Quinn sticks out her tongue, looking seductive. This action is paired with a beautiful face and a devil's figure. All the men around him swallowed. Flushed. Become like a male wolf in heat. Harley Quinn already has exquisite facial features, and due to long-term sports, she has an excellent figure. The slender long white legs are not skinny without sensuality. It is elastic and round. Everyone can't help but want to shake their minds. However, such a stunner is extremely vivid. Stick it on Yi Tian. This hot and beautiful girl is like a juicy peach bursting with one bite. Let hundreds of soldiers live in the barracks, hungry and thirsty. Somewhere in the body, slightly open. At the moment, all the soldiers shrink their stomachs carefully, for fear that others will notice it. However, that uniform movement made them even more embarrassed. Beside Yi Tian, Hill lowered his head. Her short hair obscured her face. An indescribable emotion grew from the bottom of her heart, and quickly occupied the whole heart. Her head roared, constantly recalling what Yi Tian said. "Fool, are you a fool?" she mocked. He raised his head again, and that face was already covered with tears. "Why are you crying?" Yi Tian smiled and touched his body, but found that there was no paper. There was a tear. Tear off a piece of fabric from the hem. Hill took the fabric, and his depressed emotions could no longer be controlled. The surging love in my heart can no longer be controlled. Originally, when she saw Harley Quinn and Wanda standing beside Yi Tian, I was extremely jealous and sad, and wanted to separate myself from Yi Tian. No matter how painful it is, he will not bother Yi Tian. She is a proud person, and it is impossible for her to compete with others for a man. However, now she has left everything behind. He hugged Yi Tian desperately. Everyone looked at Yi Tian, who was surrounded by two beauties, on one left and one on the right, showing jealous envy. This is the man. Never worry about whether there are women. Only to think about which woman to sleep with today. Hey, let's talk about it first, you are the last. Harley Quinn stared at Xingmu. She didn't care how many women Yi Tian had around him. As long as Yi Tian loves her and she loves Yi Tian, that's enough. As for other things, what does it have to do with her? Coincidentally, she still thinks Yi Tian is too powerful. Now it's all right, if a few people are together, I can relax more. Definitely, this is just her personal opinion. As for Wanda, her eyes were full of helplessness. Yi Tian is powerful and can make people happy. Such a person is really attractive to girls. Originally, she wanted to drive away all the peach blossoms around Yi Tian. From the looks of it now, I should find a way to consolidate my position as the main palace. As for leaving Yi Tian, what? This man was the first to be discovered by me. Besides, Yi Tian's first time, but mine. Thinking of this, Wanda somehow showed a smile on her face. And this scene stunned all the people who knew Hill well, and then they were extremely shocked. This kind of shock is not less than the emotion of the president being killed. You know, this is Hill. Known as the cold-faced Satan. Do things meticulously and be capable. Never any little daughter gesture. Although she is beautiful, she has no suitors. After all, this cold-faced female Satan has a stronger personality than a man, and there are men. However, this is what is happening now. The cold-faced girl Satan actually cried, her eyes were red. And take the initiative to hug the man. Count the two beauties in front. Now there are 3 women beside Yi Tian. It's too enviable. Yi Tian, even if the vice president is at fault, he must be punished by law. You are now committing suicide without permission. Please come with us. The general bit the bullet and opened his mouth. But I said silently in my heart, Yi Tian is big, I have nothing to do, please don't blame me. Yi Tian's expression was indifferent, and he showed a smile. Who said the vice president is dead? As soon as these words came out, everyone was stunned. The vice president's body was right in front of them. You said he was not dead. You see, the neck is twisted into 180 degrees. Which June? Yi Tian's flat voice sounded. June's figure appeared in midair. Only this time, no one saw it. However, those who were close to Yi Tian still felt the air suddenly cooled down. Master, he is dead, his soul is about to dissipate, I can't perform witchcraft. Jun said helplessly, although she has lived for more than 6,000 years. Mastered a lot of witchcraft and magic. But the research on the soul is still very weak. After all, that is the most mysterious place for human beings. Don't worry, Yi Tian smiled lightly. As soul-type magic, it happens to be the spell of the city of Kamartaj magician. Ancient One was once fortunate to follow one of the 5 creation gods. Under the teaching of that powerful being, Ancient One's knowledge of the soul is very deep. So, For all magicians and necromancers the hardest soul aspect, instead is the basic spells of Kamar Taj. A golden light flashed in Yi Tian's hand, and a translucent illusory soul rose from the vice president. Soul looks exactly like the vice president. Hiss. Everyone gasped. The soul body in front of him completely overturned everyone's three views. Even Spider-Man, Superman, some scary monsters, and even mysterious aliens, there is no soul in front of them to shock them. Even in the face of Superman, who was once mad at Blacken, they were not so trembling and helpless. However, what happened at this moment made them almost unsteady. Killing you is not enough, call out your soul. This group of well-trained soldiers put down their guns. They dare not aim at Yi Tian. In case the other party is unhappy, kill themselves, and then whip out their souls. Thinking about such a horrible thing, they all shudder. This time it was a real torture, and I couldn't die even if I wanted to. Make his corpse into a puppet. After Yi Tian finished speaking, he could see everyone's reaction. This is also the consequence he wanted. Talk to yourself about the law all day. Who doesn't know that the law serves those in power like you? Now, Yi Tian also told them in disguise. Death is not the end, I am in a hurry, calling your souls, I will still abuse you. June nodded, and then turned into a black mist that enveloped the fat body of the vice president. Definitely, in the eyes of everyone, only the body of the vice president can be seen, which disappeared in an instant. At the same time, Yi Tian also threw the vice president's soul into the system space. In system space, there is no passage of time. He didn't have to use magic all the time to maintain the vice president's soul. Yi Tian discovered that the system actually has many magical functions waiting for him to develop. The entire airport fell into a brief silence. Yi Tian summoned spirits and frightened them. In the end, the president said, the matter of the trial of Yi Tian will be discussed later. There are many things we need to deal with now. For example, the remaining terrorists, Killian. As soon as these words came out, the two congressmen could only nod helplessly. Facing Yi Tian, they felt chills at the moment, and they didn't even dare to look at him. Immediately, hundreds of soldiers on the ground protected the two congressmen and the president and left. Tanks and fighter planes also disappeared in the distance. The entire airport changed from noisy to extremely silent almost in an instant. Yi Tian, you are too impulsive, Amanda said. A trace of helplessness flashed across her dark face. After a while, she charged again. Actually, you waited until no one was around, and secretly killed him. With your means, as long as you don't leave obvious clues, no one will dare to find you. Yi Tian shrugged his shoulders, and said indifferently, I can't help it, it's just my temper. Amanda said, you are not afraid of revenge, what about the people around you? Some of them are not strong. Wanda snorted coldly. I can protect myself. Harley Quinn pouted unhappily. Big black girl, I haven't seen you for a few days, and your mouth is so damaged. Yi Tian looked at Amanda with blue veins and said with a smile, thank you for today's matter. Amanda didn't help much though. However, Yi Tian was clear about the other party's identity, how much risk he had taken to come here. People don't talk about it, but we have to mention it ourselves. Hearing these words, Amanda had a rare smile on her face. She took risks and did so much. On the one hand, it is for the lighthouse country. On the other hand, it's because of Yi Tian's words. She doesn't care about ordinary people's favors. But Yi Tian's favor is more precious than anything else. By the way, Witch and Harley Quinn, when will you return them to me? A Chang said with a big smile. Now she is also smarter. When communicating with Yi Tian, there is no arrogance at all. Just like fury, bland treatment. Chat like a friend. Yi Tian hadn't answered yet, when the phone rang. It turned out to be Tony's video call. Yi Tian didn't think about how Tony found his contact information. And without their own consent, friends passed. This method couldn't be easier for Tony. Killian kidnapped Potts and injected him with extremis. Help me, save her. Yi Tian's expression froze. Nodded. After all, I have seen other people's delicate bodies. It can be considered a bit of dewy love. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.